G'day folks, AoS Coach here, and we are looking at the Orruk Warclans book. That's right, we have a new Battletome to discuss, and I am joined to unpack this book preview with the intimidating brute force that is Aaron Elias Newbom, coming from both Gork and Mork from the Warglamour and Age of Ligmar. You guys can decide which one's Gork, which one's Mork, but we are going to preview the Ironjawz side of this particular book. So Ironjawz being, one half, or actually even almost like 1/3 now. We have the Big Waaagh to discuss. If you were looking for Kruleboyz, or you are an Orruk lover and you need both sides, there is another video with Jacob Brendan where we looked at the Kruleboyz side of things, got his perspective as well on the Big Waaagh. I will get Aaron to talk about his side of the Big Waaagh as well as we go through the information, and hopefully you'll have that Ironjawz and Kruleboyz kind of like melding of the pot, and you pick what kind of works for you. We're going to talk about the changes that have happened for Ironjawz. We're going to look at the faction terrain, the manifestation law, look at the Armies of Renown. So we do have 2 Armies of Renown. We have the Ironjawz Army of Renown, as well as the Big Waaagh that I just mentioned. As you can imagine, Games Workshop did send this to me in advance. They haven't seen this video, so just to let you know, points aren't available. So another piece of context, so that while Aaron and I are going to do our best to navigate the changes and what this means, depending on when you're watching this, the points will either be up on Warhammer Community or they will be coming soon. So that might change things, right? Gordrak might be 10 points. Buy a Gordrak, get 3 War Chanters. Who knows? We got no idea what's coming, but just be mindful that we're going to try to do our best with any context and just based on what we currently know. And if you want to support the channel, do come check us out either on Element Games in the UK, Walkfire Minis in USA, or Gap. Link is down below, or support us on Patreon. That is the spiel. Now we're set up. Aaron, Ironjawz is sitting here on a 43% win rate. According to Warhammer, we have a new Battletome. Some information has been out on the internet as is being previewed and kind of being shared. What's your take so far, and how have you distilled everything that's happened to Ironjawz so far? Talk to me.
Okay, so first of all, like you said, we don't have points, stuff like that, but I don't really think that points necessarily matter all that much. They're super easy to fix. So if they're wrong in either way, Battle Scrolls fix that like nothing. So like really we're here to talk about what this book has, the meat and potatoes of it, like the strategies that it's got. And I was playing previous Ironjawz when they were like even like a 38 at one point they're like a 23% win rate, but they weren't actually as bad as their win rate said they were. I got 2 4-1s and like I was having a blast, and I did well at RTTs and stuff like that. And I think the biggest thing was that Ironjawz going into 4th, their playstyle fundamentally changed. People had this Ironjawz were like hit super hard, activate like 3 units in a row, wipe a bunch of stuff, and like get into a new position, hope to blow your opponent up the table. Someone was dead by the end of turn 2, usually. Like that's how they were playing. Now they are the control army of destruction. They are a muscle control. They're fucking they're wrestling with people. They're like, think of like a wrestler. That's how they play now. They're not a run in and jumping punch you in the face and hope that works. So this new book, I think, leans farther into that. And a lot of people are kind of unhappy with where it's at because they want it to be something that the design for Ironjawz is moving away from. And a lot of people feel that Ironjawz should be this super high damage army, but if you look at the models, look at the lore, like they're covered in these heavy plates, they're fully armored, they're like slow plotting, buff heavy, like they're not really all aggro, they're brawlers, right? And so that's what they're designed to do. And I think this new book actually does a pretty darn good job of that. It didn't change as much as I would like, and there's definitely things that I wish were not as they are. But there's also a lot of changes that I was specifically I had written down. I was like, I hope this changes to this. I hope this changes to this. I hope this changes to this. And several of those did actually happen exactly as I wanted them to be. I think that this book is in a better place for where it can be and what it could be, points and everything depending, and small facts and erratas as things go. it's designed at a ground level better. It's got more tools, and before we're relying on some gimmicks, basically, and you still have your gimmicks and your little tricks, but it plays a fair, real game of Warhammer better than the previous book did by a pretty wide margin, in my opinion. And I think once people play with it, I think they will find that some of the tools are a lot stronger than they look like at first glance.
Okay. Sorry, anything else? Did I interrupt you there?
It's pretty much my summary of approximately where I'm at with it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So for the folks who haven't checked out the other video with Jacob, we got discussing a little bit, the first 6 months of any new Battletome around a new edition is always risky because you don't know when the book was written, when it was meant to be released, and how much of the meta they have seen. And I have seen some people upset with some of the rules, and we'll unpack it and what it all means, and unpack what you said around a fairer game and the play style adjustments, and hopefully get under the hood a little bit so you understand, this is the opportunities that Aaron has seen. And, I really like Ard Boys. I'm going to focus less on Gore Grunters, more on Ard Boys as an example, right? We'll get into all of this in a minute.
Yeah.
But I know Kruleboyz changed a little bit. I remember when Suns had changes as well like that, where they used to be super smashy. Then they went all that control, right? And they're still doing relatively well. They're certainly not as strong as we've seen in the past. But also, I remember people when they had a really high win percentage, people hated playing Suns. They were complained up there with that.
Very frustrating as an opponent, because even if your opponent was playing well, you couldn't really even tell if they were or not. A lot of time, it was very frustrating, right? And like you're saying, the Kruleboyz, I think Kruleboyz got hit a lot harder than Ironjawz. I also play Kruleboyz, and I'm like, that took away a lot of the things that were really fun about it. So I don't think Ironjawz lost fun things. But Kruleboyz, I do think did. I feel like it's a little bit frustrating, but they might change things here or there. We'll see. But yeah, there's awesome stuff in here, and I'll get into some more of the stuff that people should be excited about. And there is stuff that sucks. Don't get me wrong. There are some things where it's well, that's frustrating. But I think by and large, there's some really cool things you can do with this book, and I don't think it lost much. Just some small mathematical changes that, and one trick that was so dumb that every time it happened, people were like, that can't be right. That made me get a judge every time I did it, because it shouldn't have been written the way it was, and they fixed that. So, but it was strong. But I'm glad they fixed it. So.
I think that's the key, right? Is that we've seen a lot of changes. So even if you're not happy with this Battletome as it is, and I'm not saying, and let me just set the scene. I'm not saying that this is a bad Battletome and you should be upset and don't buy it. If you're an Ironjawz player, buy the book. If that's something for you, buy it. Obviously, you get the code and all things. I'm not here to buy it. Buy it. Don't if you don't. But just know that, just because this book is printed doesn't mean that rules won't be adjusted. We've seen them happen. My son's just got a whole bunch of new rules in the last battle scroll. We're seeing releases in March and June, or for General's Handbook time. There's quarterly updates, there's monthly updates. Know that there'll be patches made if something.
They showed a lot of willingness in 4th edition to actually change rules, make significant alterations, add abilities to things. They've shown a very much a willingness to do that. So even if the book ends up being in a weak spot, it'll probably only be that temporarily. And it is what it is. Power fluctuates at all times in any meta, but I think there's good stuff here. So I'm not so worried about this one moment of balance. I don't even know where it is. I don't know what the points are going to be but I see potential, so I'm excited about it. It wouldn't take much, in my opinion. So
let's see how it kind of all rolls out. Cool. So let's actually go in and start the party with what has changed. And Aaron, you can help guide me around how you perceive these changes as we kind of like, what does this mean for me as a player? Do I adjust my playstyle? Do I adjust the units in my army? Like, what does this all mean? So we'll start off with the battle trait, the Ironjawz Waaagh. So it's removed the line of text where it says you cannot pick the same unit to be the target of this ability more than once per battle. So I'll fix that up. That's a mistake for me. I don't know what H is.
This is a actually really substantial buff. It doesn't look that significant, but it is, because you can basically, like, let's say you want to play like a 1-drop list, which you can do in Ironjawz. You can Waaagh every single turn with the one character that you have, which means you have a lot more flexibility in how you build and how you move your army. Like, because a lot of the ways I was playing, I'm having like having to have like 4 or 5 characters in my army. I'd be at least like 3 drops minimum, 4, 5 drops. And positioning all these characters, you can keep doing Waahs. Takes like, it's a lot of mental tax, and like you have to put yourself in vulnerable positions. And I was like, no, my aggressive character who wants to be in the front anyway is just going to keep doing it every turn until he dies, and then I'll send in a different person if I have to. If you have Kragnos and some big pigs, Kragnos can call Waaagh every single turn, the whole game. Like, that's actually a pretty substantial buff, and I think people are a little bit sleeping on how good that is, and how it allows you to play the game optimally. Whereas before, to access your rules, you had to play the game suboptimally, so it didn't feel as powerful because you had to move pieces where you didn't really want that piece to be there, but you had to do the Waaagh. So now it's a significant change, basically. I really like this change.
It's a less bookkeeping type of change, and it means that you can tool up a hero to be as powerful as it can be, right? You know that, you can spend that rally point, bring out that Emerald Life Swarm, get that right artifact, that heroic trait, and know that you can make the most of the Ironjawz Waaagh multiple times through the game, rather than just getting one shot. It doesn't do its thing, and then like now you got to find other heroes that aren't as optimal to be calling the Waaagh. That you're like
spicy fact real quick on that point. Gordrak, when he calls his Waaagh, everyone gets +1 to hit within 18 of him, and now he can do that every single turn. That's an 18-inch aura every turn of +1 attack, +1 to charge, +1 to hit. So that's a lot. That's really good. Like, that's basically your entire army. He's now starting to have like Catacross levels of impact. And I like, this is one of those things where I was saying, like, people aren't seeing just how good these changes are and how they let you play. Like, that's a big thing you can do right there. So this I love. There's some other ones that are not as good, but this is a big one.
Start point. Yeah, someone who's not running Gordrak is like, oh, maybe it's time to revisit Gordrak because this is a great ability that I can trigger, a bunch of things. So good comment there. One change that I noticed in the spell lore is the Great Big Green Hand of Gork. It's increased the range, so it's now gone from 9 inches to 12 inches. This is a quality of life change.
Yeah,
right?
like, well, it's a small one, but it was like, honestly, I got this wrong the first time I played because I just assumed, because the Goblin one is 12 inches. It used to be 12 inches. All the other effects are 12 inches. All your spells are 12 inches. And the first time I played with it, I got it wrong, and I checked myself, like, oh crap, like, and this is just a quality of life change. It is a small buff, but really it's just preventing those like confusing moments and like inconsistencies, like how War Channons used to have 12-inch auras and 15-inch auras, and it was just like, why? Because it's a nice little fix. Not massively impactful, but it's nice.
Agreed. Next up, you've got a couple of changes in the prayer lore. So Killer Beat is now +1 on the chanting value. So it's gone from a chanting value of 4 to a chanting value of 5. And then you've got the Get 'em Beat, where the effect has changed. So it used to be until the start of your next turn. Now it's for the rest of the turn.
I'm going to be real. I can't see a reason to bring a War Chant anymore with these changes. I already was very skeptical of playing them because it's like extremely inconsistent. You have to stay in auras, and like you're a charging army a lot of time. It's really hard to like set things up. It's on 4-ups, and you can lose your points, and like it was just like very inconsistent. And you're paying points to this character who only does this thing and only does it at best half the time. Now it's worse. Chanting on a 5 is significant because it means it's very, very unlikely you can do it turn 1. So if you really need it, you're probably not going to get it. And then Get 'em Beat This is the bigger one because like countercharging and countercharging is a big part of playing Ironjawz at a high level. Not being able to get him beat until your next turn makes countercharging like significantly worse. It's kind of the change to Kragnos where he can't do the countercharging. So basically the best thing about Warp Chantas got removed, and the other good things about them got nerfed, and they already weren't necessarily that great. So this is a pretty significant nerf in my opinion, and really does inform how you have to play Ironjawz and how your builds have to be. It's a pretty significant one, and I'm not happy about it at all.
Yeah, I don't know why Killer Beat went up to 5, to be honest. Like, you know, again, going back to my son's example, I got King Brod. King Brod has a great prayer. It's a chanting value of 5. 1, so like it's like, look, Killer Beat is a good ability. Like add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons. Cast on a 10, it goes to, you know, multiple targets. Great. But I know how resource intensive it is to be always using magical intervention just to be getting that prayer off consistently, because, you know, 1, in my own prayer turn, I'm rarely hitting that 5. Heaven forbid I roll a 1 and lose a bunch of points.
Yeah.
But I'm always allocating one of my command points into magical intervention just to be able to consistently get that Killer Beat. Or in my case, the King Broad one.
Yeah, so the King Broad thing, that like his prayer is probably about as good as the Killer Beat one, but the thing is like Ironjawz are probably the most CP intensive army in the game. Like you have to be extremely disciplined with your CP because you need it for like everything. With the whole way they play, you're spending all of your CP every time, and you always want more. Even when you're underdog, you're like, I wish I could have 6 or 7 or 8 CP because like I'm starving right here. So like doing the prayer during their turn, it's like you just don't have it available to you. Like you need to be doing your redeploys, you need to be doing counter charges, you need to be doing alt defenses, rerolling charges, like all the time with them. So it's like you don't really even have the play option. When you actually sit down and play, you'll find that like you never have the CP available to do the prayer during their turn. And then you just roll 1 anyway and lose D3 points. And it's like, you know, it just doesn't work. And I hope that they change this back. Also, annoyingly, you know, the 9-12 with the great green big hand, they made it consistent 12-12, but everything's 12. And then here they just changed the value. So instead of 4-4-4-4-4, now it's 4-5-4, and it's like annoying. That's a quality of life thing, but it just bothers me. It's like, why change it?
My last comment on the War Chanter and this ability before we go to the next one is I wonder if they're trying to force your play style to be more aggressive with the War Chanter. So instead of sitting at the back doing a bunch of beats, because obviously you got the ability, if it slays a model, you get D3 ritual points. I wonder if they're trying to get you more into the thick of things, fighting more, getting those points that supports that 5 up. But whether you want to do it, and I guess the terrain feature, and we'll get into the terrain feature, if that's even something you'd want to do, we'll pause on that. But it's a very interesting, I don't know why it went to a 5. I'd love to see it go back to a 4 personally.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to be able to fight with them, but they just are not good at fighting, and they die too easy. If their save was 1 better or something, or like they're hit a little bit harder, then that'd be valid. But like where it is, they do like 2 damage and then they die.
The D3 be average to the.
Well, I mean, like just like only 2 gets through is what I'm saying. Like, like it just doesn't really do that much.
I hear. Speaking of which, I will get into this in the very future. I've actually got the proper rules up. We'll go through the new terrain feature, which is free, no points, amazing manifestation law, good option. Love to hear your thoughts and how you think about this versus universals. Stay tuned on this one. What else do we have? So, couple of rule changes has happened on a war scroll. This is a really interesting one. So destructive bulk and smash through abilities have merged. So they just it used to be 2 abilities. Now it's 1 ability called destructive bulk. Initially, I thought that smash through just got removed. When you actually look at the wording, they just merged them together. So now destructive bulk on the mega boss or Maw Crusher is once per turn, army, any combat phase. If this unit charged this turn, roll a D3. On a 2-up, this unit can move 2D6. It can pass through combat ranges of enemies and end that move in combat. Then pick a unit, and any unit that this unit's passed through, blah, 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 inflicts the mortal wounds or double them if you're going into infantry. So they have merged those two rules.
They actually did more than merge it. This is actually it is a simplification where they merged two rules into one, and because why not really? But it's actually a buff. The old way it was worded, it basically didn't work. Because you could pile in 2d6, but you could never be more than half an inch away from the initial target that you charged, because you had to charge into somebody, and you couldn't pile away from anybody. So you couldn't even really do anything with the 2d6 movement. It was basically like, it was theoretically cool, but in actual play, you couldn't do what you want to do with it. The wording on this one is different. You're doing, in the combat phase, doing a 2d6 move. It's not a pile in. So you can like leave one combat and go into another combat. You can actually do what it's supposed to do, which is put you in the position they don't want you to be in, and like springboard off of people. So it's a meaningful buff to the Mcryan, who definitely needed some help. So I'm glad that this ability works now, and I think it'll be a lot more fun and a little bit stronger. It's like a huge, massive buff, but it is meaningful and helpful.
I will call it a neutral. I wouldn't call it a buff. Hear me out here. You know, you're the expert. I'm the coach. So the ability that's been then swapped out, which is the smash through. Smash through wasn't triggered on a dice roll. So if you don't hit the 2 up, so in the old rules, smash through was just automatic, right? So I could always guarantee that 2d6 piling move. Now it's triggered off at the D3. So if I don't hit the 2 up, I lose both of them. So while the overall ability is better, you are now reliant on the dice roll. So that's why I would say it's a neutral.
Yeah, that's a good point. But
if you roll a 1, it's worse. If you roll a 2 up, it's better.
Yeah. And it's a 2 up on a D3, so it's like a 3 up, which is always annoying to read.
It's a failure. 1 in 3.
For some reason, my brain was interpreting it as that the damage was on the D3 roll. So I didn't realize that. Good eye on that. That's a good point. It's a bit of a wash, but it's a mechanically better. The rules actually work, which is going to be a consistent theme of some of these changes they've been doing. But the rules now work the way they should work, stronger or weaker, but they work for real. You know,
overall, it's a better rule, but you are relying on a dice roll. And when you roll that 1, you will reminisce. You're like, I didn't have to roll a dice back in the day.
If you're not rolling dice to see if you get to use your rules, you're not playing destruction. Apparently, everyone else gets to just do their abilities. We have to roll for it. It's annoying. Like, everything's on a dice roll, and it was really Ironjawz is like, oh, gosh, okay, how many 3-ups do I have to roll in a row?
Well, welcome to Suns. Welcome to Suns. Second change I noticed is the Tusk boss on more Grunter. So the pig hacker weapon now wounds on 3s. It used to wound on 2s.
Yeah, this is just a straight nerf, obviously. And one of the things that's been annoying me about Ironjawz in general this whole time is like the inconsistency on what the kind of brute / bosses wound on. Like, it's some of them wound on 2s, some of them wound on 3s. There's no real logic to it. And if they're going to do this change, they should like make it more of a sweeping change. Like, Ragers probably shouldn't wound on 2s if they're going to not let the pig hacker do it. You know, like, it's just sort of one of those weird things that I wish was more consistent. But it's just a straight nerf, and I don't think it was needed. But oh well, it is what it is, I guess.
I hope all I can hope for is a points decrease now on the Tusk boss, because like that is significant. There's no real easy way to get +1 to wound. So like
right now he's like perfect, but now he's getting nerfed, and it's like, okay, well, now he has to go down even more points, and so you might end up with a critical mass issue where they have to get so cheap that, like with Nash Tube's last edition with like 110 points, and then I brought 6, and I was like, oops. Might end up with one of those problems, which I hope not, but yeah, he has to go down in points now, I think.
Question for you before I move to the next rule is, do you think the value of the Tusk boss on more Grunter changes so much that because of this change, I'm now no longer going to run it? Let's assume that it doesn't get any points changes, right? Like, is it still a good unit or worth considering, or does this like take it off the table?
It is still a good unit and still worth considering if you're building around pigs. If you're already going to be playing pigs, it's good. Right now, it's good at the point where like you will change your builds to include it. This nerf brings it to the point where it's like, if you want to play with big pigs, then you're going to play it. But like, I'm not going to go out of my way to include it.
No, it's not S tier where like you're always going to include it because it's so good.
Because right now I think it's the best unit in the book currently.
But the change is not enough for you to drop it completely.
No, it's still good. It's still good. If the points are the same, it's still good. It's just not great anymore. It's just good.
Yeah, whenever you lose something, you always hope you get something back. So I can appreciate it. The second of the merging we have is Get Stuck in Lads and Lead the Brutes has merged. So we now just one ability called Lead the Brutes. It's a reaction when you declare a fight ability for this unit. Pick a friendly brute unit that has not used a fight ability this turn, and blah 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 blah. We're used to this, right? The 1-2 fight. Basically, the mega boss fights, then the brutes can fight after that. But the extra ability there is if it's picked to do so, add 1 to the attack characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn.
Yeah, so it's obviously worse than before, but also I think it's a better designed rule. The way it was before, it basically like the in combat one, I've only ever done it once. It just never comes up because of the way that you don't have any sequencing tricks. It's just too hard to line up, and yet there's on a dice roll and like on a 3-up too. It wasn't even like a 2-up. And his other boost also on a 2-up, and so there's a 2-up and then a 3-up to do with his up the bonus 2 attacks, and it was good, potentially, but inconsistent, and, it was stronger in this one for sure, but if the Mega Boss goes down in points to, 150, 160 area, then this is actually great. If he stays where he's at, then I already think he's, 30 points ever costed as he is. He's just so fun that I want to play him. But this is a good, well-written rule that interacts well, and there's one thing we'll get to when we're talking about one of the sub-factions that makes this actually very good. And if you're playing that, then it's worth playing him, even if he's at the same points as he is now. But it's clearly worse than it was before.
Interesting, because I would have said that it's better. Well, not better. I would say it's slightly better than neutral. And I say this because there's no dice roll. Because Get Stuck in Lads used to trigger on a 2+, and there was a hero phase thing that was within 12, right? So should the battle not unfold, you'd lose a bunch. Well, I mean, actually...
Well, there still is a dice roll. The dice roll is the charge roll. That's the... He has to get in, right? So, that's the trick, right? Whereas before he didn't have to get in to be able to buff them. So that's where, there is still a dice roll, but he has to get in there. So, but I think if it was just this change... If you only previously could either give it in the hero phase or in combat, but he has both right now.
Because you had two chances. That's the thing, right? You had two chances. So, which is where probably it's probably a slight nerf.
That's why.
But then when you look at the current rule, it's now no dice roll at all. So it's just one guaranteed objective if you're in combat. So it's clean.
It's clean, and it's better than either one of the two rules, just worse than the two combined. So, yeah. But if he's appropriately pointed, then I actually love this change. It just has to go down a little bit. We already did have to go down because he started 230 for some reason, which was insane. I don't know why he was so expensive, but
well, there's no artifact. What was that artifact? Was it the Mighty Destroyer? No, what was the
the Destroyer one from last book or from last edition? Plus 3 damage.
Yeah, you just need one of those. You just need one of those.
We're going to end up talking about them, but there is one of the Armies of Renown has a great combo with him. So,
last change is going to be an easy one to go through. Gore Grunters, you've seen 2 changes. You've seen the melee weapon, the chopper or hacker, has gone to 4 attacks. So you've gained an attack. Yay! But the Grunter Tusk, obviously the companion weapon, is now hitting on 5s instead of 4s. The hitting on 5 seems to be the thing that's upset the internet the most because, first off, cavalry is doing really strong in the meta right now, but there's a couple of exceptions. Cities of Sigmar Cavaliers is certainly one of them. Gore Grunters being the other, who, despite the whole cavalry meta, Varangard doing well, Hexray's doing well, Dawn Rider's doing well, Gore Grunters are not. And now we've gone from +1 attack on the dude on top, -1 to hit on the piggy.
Yeah, so like I wish that the spears, the riders' weapons were the ones that got +1 charge damage, but they're not, which is a little bit sad. But I think this is mostly like a wash in terms of power level for them, because they do get a bonus attack, but their better attacks hit worse. If you're not charging with them, they're better than before. If you are charging, they're worse than before. But it's kind of a wash. They hold buffs better, but you're really never going to be throwing buffs onto them. Like, it'd be silly to do so unless you had no other options. So it's about a wash, but it's just like it's more of like calling to how frustrating it is the way they're currently designed, because they aren't satisfying, and they don't fulfill the gameplay fantasy of what you imagine they would do. Like, they're actually a great unit for certain ways of playing the game, but it's not satisfying. They're really great pinning pieces. You charge someone, you don't die, you might stories tag a unit. It's like, cool, you slow people down, but like you didn't do any damage. It didn't feel good, and they're expensive. And if you don't do that, then they don't do any damage or anything. So Gruntas and Gorgunters are in not a great spot, and I don't think that's really changing. They're about the same power.
Yeah, we haven't seen them really do well in the meta so far, and I don't think this change is going to get them unless there is a heavy discount, which I don't think is going to be happening. I anticipate that this book is going to be more about Ardboys, Brutes, Wreckers, things like that, rather than your Ball Grunters. So just, again, we don't know what points are going to look like. We don't know what rules are going to be adjusted over the next couple of months. But right now, it's probably net neutral when you look at the +1 attack here, -1. But if you want to make the most of it, you've got to put an all-out attack there. You've got to find that +1 to hit to bring those companion weapons down to 4s.
Yeah, you have to spend, and like I was saying earlier with the CP, this army's so CP intensive. Like, if you're spending all attack on Gorguntas, something's not going well for you. Like, that's not a position you want to be in. So, and now you kind of have to have any chance of doing damage, or you have to put a War Chant buff on them, and then you're like, this is just not efficient and effective. So I would generally say avoid playing them other than just as like utility screens. They're okay, but they're nothing impressive. I wouldn't build around them.
If you were going to take them, you might take a reinforced unit to make a bigger bang for buck, right? That +1 to hit goes further, but again, the point, are you better with the unit?
If you do put the +1 damage buff on them with Kilobeat, which is a lot harder to do now, they will hit really hard now. They have an extra attack and that bonus damage, and if they fight cavalry, like they're in a pretty good spot for that. But it's just like you're throwing a bunch of resources and points into something that could be spent better elsewhere. But I do like them as screening units, and the objective captures. They're pretty tanky, and they're fast. And you need that, but yeah.
No, good, fun thoughts so far. Well, interesting thoughts.
I think there was one change that you actually didn't put in here that is, I think, important, which is the wording on Shield Bash for Ardboys changed.
Oh, let me have a look. You keep talking. Let me bring it up. Let me bring up the.
So
I will edit the video. So we'll go back and I'll put some things in here. So I'm going to bring up the. Ardboys, Shield Bash. So pick an enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit to be the target. Make a Shield Bash roll the D6 for each model in that unit that's within 3 inches of the target. For each 6+, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. Yeah. That is the new rule.
So previously they had to have charged. The enemy had to have charged, and it didn't have the 3-inch rule in there. So the entire unit could do it, but only if the opponent had charged. So now they can Shield Bash every combat, even if they charge or if they're just grinding.
Yeah, I see it there. I'm looking at the app now. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit, and that charge this turn to be the target. So they've removed the charge.
The charge clause, but they added in only units within 3. Only models within 3 can do it. Because before it was like really kind of silly. There was stuff like I'd run 40 Ardboys side by side that charge one unit. I'd counter charge at the other unit. And because they charge, I'd still get to Shield Bash them. And only one model would touch them, but all 20 would get to roll. And it was like, this doesn't make sense. This is like how the rules should work. But then at the same time, you'd think our boys were good at grinding out fights, but they were very, very much not. So now they're much better at grinding out fights because they get to shield bash every single combat phase, and they're much better at charging than they were before. They're still better at being charged because they get the +1 rend, but like they're more useful aggressively than before. Whereas before, what I was doing, I was just hanging out, blocking the space. If people charged them, like cool, shield bash, Pfeifer turn, and I'd retreat every time. Like I wouldn't even stay. I'd retreat, stay right outside 3, force them to charge me again, or just sit and rally. It was like kind of boring. Now you can actually like slog it out much better than before with them. I think it's not necessarily a buff or a nerf, but it's like a neutral thing, but it definitely makes them feel better.
It's better. It's definitely better because, as you said, especially reinforcing that unit of Ard boys and getting into the middle of the battle, or the middle of the table, grinding it out. At the moment you only get that one turn, and there's obviously a bunch of dependencies. Now, I can be doing it as long as possible. So, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a significant change, and I think it makes the army play a lot better. This is one of the reasons why I was saying, like, I'm much more positive about Ironjawz than a lot of people are. These changes actually lead to way better gameplay dynamics and let you play a better game on the table. So I think it's a pretty significant one.
No, great comment. Great observation. I missed that one. Any other ones that I missed that you picked up?
Not to my knowledge. I think that's it.
I did a pretty good job, though. I missed one, but I'll make sure to update the slides so you all have the most accurate ones, but good pick. So we now have the new terrain feature. There are 2 versions of it. The Kruleboyz one is different to the Ironjawz one. This is obviously the Ironjawz version. It is the Bossrokk Tower. As you can see, it acts very similar to what the old Khorne terrain feature. The more pot for the ogres. Basically, it is going to give you a boost, and if there is an idiot that is on top of the tower, you get bonuses to those boosts. So, a couple of little things you need to know about. It's health score 12, saver 4+. So you set up your terrain as normal. Now you can basically turn an infantry hero into a shouty boss. So you don't have to declare it at the start. It's not something that you have to do in your list construction. Basically, if your terrain feature does not have anyone sitting in the tower and you have that Ironjawz infantry hero within 3 inches of the tower, it can turn into a shouty boss and then it runs up onto the tower. You obviously can get off it as well with the I'm off and you walk down. Cool, we get it. Up, down, things happen. Yeah. When you're up on the tower, a couple of things. You obviously can't move. When you're measuring distances on things, you're now using the terrain feature rather than the model. You can fight and, should the tower die, you fall and take damage, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let me read out the rules, and then I'd love your observations. So that's the mechanics around the tower. What do I get for my tower? So I've got aggressively bossy. Once per turn, your hero phase, pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this terrain feature to be the target. Roll a dice. Add 1 to the roll if the terrain feature has a shouty boss. On a 4+, pick one of the following effects to apply until the start of your next turn. Your options are, that's ours, you get. Subtract 3 from the target's control score. Zog off with your magic. Subtract 1 from casting and or chanting rolls for the target. And then finally, oi, hold it. Subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls to a minimum of 1.
Yes. Oh, I think this thing is amazing. This thing is incredible. I think people are massively underrating how good it is. All 3 of these abilities are very relevant for Ironjawz specifically. And they're leaning into this new playstyle really, really well. So subtracting 3 from a control score, your Ironjawz right now is like a zone control army. They control space on the tabletop really well. They can control who's charging really well. They can control who can stand where and on what objectives really well. That's like what they're really strong at doing, controlling where people can be. Then modifying control scores can further, like if you kind of lock someone out of where they want to be, it's really hard for them to Like you can just basically flip things around and be like really annoying and like walk your character on a thing they have a character with and just take it. And you're like, cool. I don't have to overextend. That one's all right. So it's the weakest of the three. Starting roll one from casting rolls and chanting rolls, that'll come up sometimes. But when it's good, it's really good. Like if you're fighting in the gash and you're like, cool. So that's 8, 9 casts that are now worse. I'm much more likely to be able to unbind. And one of the things is like that what people don't really realize is that Ironjawz, I think, has the best wizard in the game. The Weird Knob Shaman is a 2-cast wizard for 130 points with a good spell lore. And also a shooting attack. It's and has nice little tricks like hero phase moving and then being in range to cast spells, annoying things like that. So we already want to play 1 to 2 of them anyway. So you're gonna have like 4 casts for unbind sometimes, and then you're subtracting from their ability to do it. And you're unbinding their spells, and suddenly you have this dominance of magic and who's putting on buffs and who's not putting on buffs, which you fight better. The really, really good one though is the third one. Subtracting 1 from the number of dice rolled and making charge rolls from a unit is enormous. It's basically, it's almost the equivalent of Bellacoring something. Not quite that good, but it's close. And some of this and some of the other stuff that has changed has led into this new ability to play a actually far more aggressive version of Ironjawz than the index would have allowed. Basically, this combined with the spell lore, the new manifestations, allows you to play a style that I like to call the sledgehammer ballet, where basically like you're playing it's like dance where basically my hammers are going to hit and I'm going to not let your hammers hit me back. And that lets you really snowball a game out of control super fast. So if I can come in with my pile of pigs and then you got your Vanguard right there and I'm like, so you only charge 1d6 and now you can't punish me. And then I get to hit you again with all my pigs. And all of a sudden the game is blown wide open. Whereas if they had gotten to charge you, you are at best neutral, if not losing. So I think people are underestimating just how strong this is in an army like Ironjawz. And then when you combine it with stuff like Mighty Destroyers and minimum 4 redeploy, they're like, your threat isn't getting to me. Yeah, it's a dice roll, but like it's also a free model. So every time you get it off, it's like game-endingly good if you know how to take advantage of it. And I think people don't realize how good it is. And I think if they play, once you get enough reps and you start just like, I'm just going to throw it out there. And if it lands, I'm going to form my whole turn around it and go super aggro. If it doesn't, I'm going to play safe, you know? It's really, really good. I think this is massive. And you know, if points don't change, think of it like your army went down 200 points because I would pay 200 points to have this on the table. So it's the equivalent of your whole army going down 200 points to be able to include this, in my opinion.
The -1 dice roll is big. I agree with you. It allows you to be more aggressive on the table and with some pre-measuring, basically deny someone from countercharging you. Like a straight up countercharge. Like if you just play it right and get your right widgets, this is a game changer. The one that I love the most, and I know you were talking about the -1 dice roll, and I love that, but I love the middle one. Subtract 1 from casting and chanting rolls. Why do I love that? How many armies are spending 1 CP to magical intervention, a manifestation on the table, charge up their priest to be able to unleash that 10 up or 8+? Someone who is spending resources to put buffs on using magical intervention. -1, and it's -1 till the start of your next turn. So if you go at the top of the turn, and should you get doubled, that is a big, long extension of -1 to casting and chanting. Then obviously at the -1 for magical intervention as well, should they do it in your turn.
Yeah.
That either makes it really hard to bring on that Crom Spine, that Purple Sun, whatever it might be, or it gets them
teleport away from you, right? And people always try to teleport to safety. You're like, yeah, so you're at -2 now to do that. If you roll it, you roll it. But do you want to spend the CP to do it? If not, I'm going to get you. So, I agree. It is when it's good, it's very good. It's just a little bit situational, right? But like people are not realizing how good it is. And what you're saying with the magical intervention, that's huge because you can do this before they get to try. So now their whole plan is just in shambles if you get this off on them, right? So it's really good. It's really strong.
but none of them are better or worse. Like they're all situational. If I was going to be using it, I think, the -1 dice roll is definitely where I start. Because again, I want to be charging you. You don't want to be charging. I want to do the charging, but especially in some armies, that will be critical because they'll all have a priest or a wizard unless they're KO, and they're all wanting to spend magical intervention. So, good tool.
Yeah, and Dap's RTK is going to be really good late game in a lot of situations. There's only a few models left on the table. It can be really, really strong. I'm assuming that one also lasts until your next, until the start of next turn. So
all of them until the start of your next turn. So it's great that it's not just until the end of your turn. It's now until the start of your next turn. So that's quite a long. Quickly before I move on to the manifestation, because this is important. Would you put a hero as a shouty boss in the tower? And if so, what type of hero are you thinking about that might be best to sit there?
Stuff like Ardboy bosses are great for that. Or buff pieces, because it does kind of extend their range a little bit of their auras and their abilities. And you don't really want them to be moving too aggressively anyway. So like you just hang out in there, and then eventually you want to get out, and 6 inches is farther than they normally move anyway. So when you do get out, you're moving faster than you otherwise would. And it's like, you just kind of like, I would say, don't form your game plan around trying to make sure there's a guy in it, but it's pretty easy to just have a guy in there for free for a good portion of the game. So like, it's +1 of the roll is nice, but it's like not worth changing your game plan around. But if it's free to do, like if you're already going to be there, you set up the right place, your army's already kind of standing there, it's like, cool, might as well. And also it can protect things. You can use it in cool ways to sort of zone out teleports and stuff like that with a bigger base a little bit. And like there's some nice little tech you can do with it on top of that. So
it'll make things like your Weird Knob Shaman much more survivable, because now they're sitting in the tower's taking damage rather than it. So it's going to help you keep that wizard around a little longer, especially as your force is moving forward. But I think your point is that, you got something for me?
The War Channa now can stay and fight long enough to get the D3 bonuses. It's a little bit tankier up there, so like you can actually fight a couple turns and not die, and then you can actually start getting off all your chance if people are fighting it there. So
yeah, Shubik's going to fight with it, but but I think the point is, like, the challenge is that you don't have that many heroes that are cheap. You don't have really any heroes under 100 points yet. We don't know if they're changing, but right now, currently, there's none. So if you are going to put it up, basically the question is there a trade-off to get the +1? And is it worth putting in that 120, 140 point hero to get +1 on that roll? You all be the judge on that. And I think it's going to be situation by situation decision.
Yeah, it's situational, right? But it's perfectly fine a 4-up. If you get it, you get it. Just I wouldn't invest too hard to worry about it too much, but it's a great ability when it goes off. Sometimes you're going to want to use it, but you're going to have to just assess it every time on whether it's worth it or not.
Or find yourself an Army of Renown that comes with a bunch of useful things, like the Gobapalooza, and then like get yourself a little Unravel Rouser. I don't know.
That little cheap hero.
It's find yourself a cheap hero, like just chuck it in there. If you could easily bring in this new Hobgrot Slitter hero, like cool, just chuck him in the tower. But
there's that little troll Army of Renown or Regiment of Renown thing that has the little tiny character and the big troll. Just pop him in there. He's like 50 points, whatever, Why not?
Well, speaking of why not, or maybe why should I, you've also got your manifestation laws. So I'm not going to read this all out, basically, but, I'm going to give you the TRDL. You've got 3 manifestations. 2 have a casting value of 5. 1 has a casting value of 7. They all have some very interesting rules. As you can imagine, the casting value of 7, Foot of Gork, is definitely, probably in my opinion, the stronger of the 3. Does some really cool things that I'll let Aaron share in a moment. The Gork Aurora has a melee attack. It's the only one that has actually any fighty things. And it does have some interesting rules there as well. And then finally, you have the situational Morkspit Marsh, which could then play quite nicely in combination with your tower, because you can subtract 3 from the control score and or turn off run ability. So you could turn off charge of one dice, and then you could be chucking in the no run as well. So, talk to me. What are you thinking?
I think these are fantastic. I think it'll be a rare day, and with only specific builds, that you choose a generic manifestation lore over this as either Kruleboyz or Ironjawz. I think these are really, really powerful. And I think they're.
Why? Tell me. Yeah, cool.
So, basically, one of the things that Ironjawz struggles with is they have all these like tricks where you're like, oh, I want to teleport and charge, and it's like, well, are you gonna land the charge? Like, you can get +1 to your charge. Sometimes you get +2. Gorkrora can help you potentially get more while also doing other things. Like, it's just like a nice utility thing, and you kind of be up in the mix, surrounded by your guys anyway. So it's like a nice way to kind of add some consistency to an army that's super CP hungry and can be very inconsistent. So it's a nice piece. The other two are the ones that are like big. So the Footed Gork can stomp on people, and it does damage, and that's cool. But it's the subtract 1 from the charge rolls, one dice from the charge rolls again. So you have 2 ways to do that. So during your hero phase, you try and hit him with that. If it doesn't work, you can like cast it during your turn, or try and countercast with it, and put that down, and basically just turn off their threat. And this lets you continue to hammer them without getting hammered back, and that's like really, really, really good. And if they don't deal with it, it's going to keep doing that and stomping around and being absolutely obnoxious. So they have to deal with it. If they don't, they're like, a whole army's going to get shut down for like the rest of the game. All the parts that matter to you in those sort of matchups, like, will not get to participate in the game unless they get rid of this Footed Gork. So getting it off can be absolutely devastating from a control standpoint. And from a positioning standpoint, and like being able to play the sledgehammer dance and win it, and then the Mork Spit Marsh is just like, so I was talking earlier about how Ironjawz is the control army of destruction. They're all about controlling space, saying who can be where, pinning people when they don't want to, say, like, so you're doing stuff like let's say with Gorgons, you're running up, charging to something, and your Mighty Destroyer is tagging another unit during their hero phase, so those units can't move, right? And you have Mork Spit Marsh coming down and saying, you can't run if you're within 6 of this. So you can't get, these other units also are not going to be able to get what they want. You can countercast it when someone's doing Seize the Center, and you're like, so you're not seizing the center anymore because you can't run. And that's just 4 points right there. And you don't, it's like one of those things where like it's cast on a 5, so even countercasting, it's a 6. It's very easy to get off. And when it's good, it's going to be very good. And these all kind of play really well with the tower, because like subtracting 3 from the control score, while they're within 6 of that manifestation, and then you also have the other way to subtract 3. You can subtract 6, or you can take 2 different points and switch the math on it. When, like, especially late game, that's really relevant. And they won't really want to be attacking it. They want to spend resources fighting it, because it's like there's not models left to be doing that. So you end up like, basically these are going to amount to you scoring like 12 to 16 points over your opponent compared to not having them. That's the way I see it. These will score you a lot of points and deny a lot of points, and allow if you get your spells off, and you know during your hero phase, because you're going to do your tower and do Footed Gork, if they land, then you can be super, super aggressive and be really safe. And if you're set up to double somebody, like, you can take that risk and say, if I double you, you're dead. If I don't double you, I'm still totally fine. Which is previously not the case. Like, Big Pigs died pretty easily, but now like these combined with Big Pigs, and you're like, all right, you're striking last. I'm fighting with like 4 pigs into you. I'm blowing up all these units and doing a stupid amount of damage. And if I double you, I'm going to just blow up more stuff. If I don't, you are just still going to be sitting there, not being able to do anything to me. And when you combine this with the changes to Waaagh, so let's say you have the pig boss with like 3 big pigs around him, and he's just calling Waaagh every turn. This little ball, and he's protected with these spells with the tower, and like it's really, really hard to punish. It is all based on dice rolls, but you have multiple chances to do it, and that adds a lot of consistency because you have multiple chances to attempt it, and during your hero phase if you don't or don't have it. So before you have to do all your movements and stuff, you know before you make your plays if you're safe or not. So it's a pretty big deal.
Can I add one more thing that I don't think you mentioned on the Marsh spit or the
Yep.
Mock spit Marsh? You can't use run abilities. What's a run ability, Aaron?
Redeploy.
What does that mean for an Ironjawz player?
No redeploying away from me. Yeah, that's actually, I didn't even think about that. That's actually a great point. Because, like, remember, I was alluding earlier, like, teleporting and trying to land a charge. It's like, yeah, +1, maybe +2. But you're just going to redeploy away. And I can't Mighty Series after I teleport. Now they can't redeploy away. And if you are in position with the Gorkrora, which this lore is good enough and the ganks here are good enough that I will be running 2 shamans every time. Because I want one to cast the Gorkrora on the other guy who's then going to buff himself. And then cast more spells up close and give the bonuses to charges and if he rolls well, obviously, but it's just good, period. So, like, you're just getting way more consistency and you're getting to make your plays and you're getting to stop your opponent from shutting down your plays, which is a lot of the weaknesses that Ironjawz was struggling with.
And maybe the last comment that I'll slightly make, and whether you want to invest in this or not is up to you, but for someone who loves kill and beat and is disappointed on the chanting value of 5, you know, if you get that shaman to bring on the Gorkrora and then use the ability because it's priest and wizard, you might get then the war chanter to then bring that down to a 4, which, I mean, you are investing into it to make it work, but it may be the difference for someone who really loves the kill and beat that is not happy with the 5. Well, the Gorkrora brings that down. You now think about the synergy and how that stays alive and blah, blah, blah.
And if you kind of plan around and you're going for, okay, I'm above 2 units, hopefully, on turn 2, hopefully. If you get Gorkrora down, you're adding like 2 to your bonus. You get a couple rolls at it. It makes it much more likely to work out for you. Much more consistent. And he also kind of wants to be up front. So, and then you're more likely to land your charges after that too. So it's kind of a nice combo.
Deploy them together. Just make sure they're in distance. Trigger the Gorkrora first, then go for the beat. Just think of the sequence, but could be a way around it. But again, do you want to? Is it better off using the Gorkrora to then get off a second spell, which might be the Foot of Gork? I'll leave that you all to decide.
Yeah, going to depend on the build and your play style for sure.
Last question, then I'll move on, is, okay, so overall, both you and my other guest, my Kruleboyz guest, were both very high on this manifestation lore. Do you think it replaces the universals, right? So, you know, right now, Kromspine, Morbid, Aetherod, Primal, like all of those are quite popular in the meta right now. For those people who are currently running that lore, I guess, is it worth swapping over to the Orruk one? What's the benefits like, or like, are you still playing, you know, this situation because I need Soul Screen Bridge, I need Gravetide, I need blah?
Yeah, so I think it is. I think this is actually probably the best or second best army manifestation lore. The OR one's probably a little bit better because that one's just crazy, but like it's way up there. And it is so synergistic with what we want to do. And the generic manifestation or universal manifestation lores, most of them are like a little clunky with how Ironjawz want to play. Like you want like half of like 3 or 4 of them. Like Cogs is kind of cool for rerolling charges. But like the rest of that lore doesn't do much with Ironjawz, right? Primal can be cool, but like it's just a little bit clunky. Like you aren't tanky enough for like Lifestorm to be the greatest. Like it's okay. And they're all kind of like that. The bridge was probably the best for Ironjawz, and this is competing with the bridge. And you know you're gonna have to make a choice on when you prefer. It depends on what your build is. Like if you're playing super Ardboy heavy, you probably want to play the bridge one. But if you're playing a more hard hitting version, you probably want to play this.
Okay. So I'm hearing that obviously it's still used, you know, whatever manifestation lore, but it's definitely up there. And
yeah,
I definitely recommend giving it a go. It's I see this in equivalence to the Morbid Conjuration without the high casting value. Yeah, because there's a lot of utility in Morbid. There's a lot of utility, this is a lot of utility for you guys. And I think it actually rewards you more than Kruleboyz. If I had to like draw a line in the sand, I actually think a lot of this is better for you guys bet more.
I agree with that. I mean, it's good in Kruleboyz, but it's very, very good in Ironjawz. I think Ironjawz for sure got out better off than Kruleboyz in many ways here. So this is freaking awesome. I love it. It's fantastic.
Actually,
I'm buying one the second I can. I'm gonna have a fun time painting it. So
I might even say the terrain feature might be a little bit better for you guys as well, but we won't tell Kruleboyz players. And let's be honest, like I look at the Kruleboyz, I'm like, that's fine. But like you guys, like I think this is way more impactful.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
Any final comments about manifestation laws? There wasn't a lot of changes, so we'll quickly go through just the generic rules, and then we'll get to the Armies of Renown. So anything else you'd want to call out at this particular point?
No, I think we've said most of what we need to say about the manifestations. Get them. They're great.
They are. I would definitely give them, like, unlike most of the faction ones, this one actually is worth taking.
Yeah, most of the faction ones are disappointing as hell, and this one's awesome. So,
all right, so let's blast through these and let's get to the universals. After the universals, the Armies of Renown. By the way, like something that I should have said that I didn't actually say is there's obviously also the we'll be bringing it up for a second. There is the Spearhead in here as well, so. I know a lot of people were excited to see Spearhead. But
I actually play Spearhead regularly. I quite enjoy it. It's fun.
Spearhead's great. But like Ironjawz was like as soon as we saw where is the Ironjawz? Well, you've gotten Spearhead there, so
I didn't know that, but I'm happy about that because I was like, why is it no Ironjawz?
It's in there. It's been there, right? So you get Mighty Destroyers in Spearhead, which is sick. It's Mega Boss, Ardboys, Brute Rages, and Brutes.
That sounds fun.
And there's some cool, regiment abilities and enhancements. But Mega Boss, 3 Brute Rages, 5 Ardboys, 5 Ardboys, 5 Brutes is your Spearhead. So there you go.
Sounds good. I definitely want to play that. So
all right, Aaron, anything else you would say this particular sorry.
There we go.
Hopefully lag. I
think we talked about the Mighty Destroyers and the Ironjawz Waaagh changes. Like the Waaagh changes is significant. Mighty Destroyers is exactly the same as before. Still a great ability. You have to use it very, very tactically, but it is good. It's a constant nuisance for your opponent. So, but they're pretty much the same.
Speaking of the same, your battle formations haven't changed much.
Given I think I saw any changes.
Given like what we've seen has changed both new things and rule changes, do you have any favorite ways of playing from like a battle formation point of view at the moment?
I would say that based on context of the Tower and manifestations, Granted Stampede is a little better than before. But the Iron Fist is pretty bad. The rest are great in the ways that whatever way you want to play that fits your play style. They're all good in their own ways. It just depends how you want to build them, but they're all good. Granted Stampede gained a few points because of context of what you can now do on the tabletop with them. So, yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how the Ardboy builds go. You've now got obviously again no changes with your artifacts. Oh, the hero trait. Sorry. Got a favorite?
Eye for the Fight is fantastic. It's so good. When you combine with Mighty Destroyers and you're like just denying battle tactics left and right and just being super obnoxious. And it's really good with big pigs where you're just like, okay, I want to redeploy because it counts as a run, gives me 2 momentum points, and then I can minimum 4 redeploy, so I'm safer too. It's just really good. The other ones are okay, but Eye for the Fight is really good.
I do like Mega Bossy. That's another one that I like.
If you're building, if you have a certain specific way you're building your army, Mega Bossy can be really, really good. But it's like niche. Like when it's good, it's a fantastic choice for your army. Like you're playing a really, really aggressive, like teleporting and charging, you're playing like bridge and teleport with like a bunch of brutes, and like you're sending a guy in and they're all getting like +4 to their charges, and they're not going to be able to redeploy because you have the swamp thing on them. Like you can do some nasty stuff with that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I for the Fight and Mega Bossy, but obviously, again, you said that you're very CP hungry. Do you want to be redeploying? At least you got the guaranteed 4. So yeah, it's a fair trade. or fair investment. Favorite artifact?
Trophy Skulls is usually the best one. Amberbone Whetstone is nice on like a Mega Boss on foot. Or on certain times you put on like a Big Pig, but now that his wounding's getting worse, like probably not worth it. It's probably the better play Trophy Skulls. 10 to control is significant. It's a lot. Basically says you won't take this objective from me if I'm on this. And just Ironjawz are pretty tanky, so that's a pretty important thing, especially when you're playing like a 3 objective mission. And you just have a guy standing there like, it's mine. Unless you can put 13 control on here or kill him, and it's kind of hard to kill him. So it's useful. It's really useful.
Small question before I move on. Is that still true given that you can reduce control score through, certain abilities we've just talked about? Is that still true?
I would say it depends very much on like exactly how you're building, what your plan is. If you're playing like Ardboys type lists, I would say yeah, because you're all about control, like and just owning things and taking up space. Most other it's good on Big Pigs because they struggle the opposite way, where they don't have good control. So you don't have enough models, right? So it's still really helpful, but it's not as required as before. But at the same time, like, do you really want to be using your tower every turn to do the -3 when you can just have this all the time? But you can free up your tower for other options, right? So it's still good. And Armor of Gork is not good. Don't run it. It's not worth it.
Or Armor of Gork. Maybe it was Armor of Mork. And then look, I'm not even going to go through this. We know the one small change is it's gone from Hollywood in 9 to Hollywood in 12. It's a quality of life change. Nothing else you probably want to say at this point. Yeah, it's still.
The spell lore got slightly better.
Sweet. And there's not, you're not Zings, you don't have 2 choices or anything. And then the minor tweak here on the get 'em beat and the killer beat we've already talked about. Cool, we got that out of the way because I'm excited to get into this with you. So there are 2 armies of renown. One is
here's the really fun part.
Here's the fun stuff, and maybe a consideration of getting a different build or a different way of playing with your faction. First one is going to be the Zorig's Ironmongers, which is not Big Waaagh. Big Waaagh is coming later. This is purely Ironjawz. So basically, if you are playing Ironjawz, if you want to sacrifice the rules that we just spoke about, all those spells and artifacts and heroic traits, you want to sacrifice them, you can play the Army of Renown, which is Zorig's Ironmongers. There are some things to consider. I'm going to read out some of the rules and I'll get Aaron's thoughts around it. So first off, your list building is a little bit constricted. So you've got to have Zorig Anvil Smasher both in the list and must be general. You have to have it. You can include in your army Ironjawz infantry heroes. You can have non-hero Ironjawz infantry units. You cannot include regiments of renown. Important point to consider here is you can have your tower because some of the armies of renown will say you don't get your faction terrain. In this one, it doesn't have that bullet point. So you will get your faction terrain on this one. So first off, Aaron, any concerns or any thoughts on the construction? Like, are you concerned that I can't have gore grunters, I can't have pigs, I can't have, Kraknos?
Honestly, if you want to play the playstyle this encourages, you wouldn't be running those units anyway. This is for the thick lads. This is for like Gorkin and Morkin people with your muscles and like you just walking up the table and we're gonna brawl. That's what this does, and the units you can include in it wouldn't support that playstyle anyway. So I think you aren't too worried about that. It's not really a cost. And you get to have your terrain piece, so you're doing pretty good here. I think this Army of Renown is very good. Like very, very good. I think it does have the most important thing you're missing is Mighty Destroyers. You don't have Mighty Destroyers. That does matter. But at the same time, what you're getting in exchange for that, if you wanted to play this style of walking up the table like a tank of steel and death, this is going to do that. This will do it really, really well. And we were talking earlier about the Ardboy changes, how now they can shield bash every turn. And you're sitting here with the if you have 2 units that are next to each other of Ardboys, which you're gonna in this list, obviously, if I'm running at least 60 Ardboys here, they all have a 5-up ward. That's insane. That's so good. Like, they will not die. And you just take up all the space on the table and you just grind people to death. And I love it. It definitely, this is like my favorite way of playing Ironjawz, is just mass infantry. Pigs are cool, but I've always been like brutes and Ardboys are like, that's my bread and butter. I rarely play the cavalry and monsters more than like one of them. I love the infantry. So this is like probably, this or Big Waaagh is probably how I'm going to be really excited to be building around and playing and doing some cool stuff with. And I think this is going to be really fun.
So let me share what you get, right? You've opened up a Christmas present already, which I love. So a couple of things that you get here. So you get Legendary Vandal. So it's a passive ability. Melee weapons used by friendly Zorix Ironmonger's units, which is the army, have anti-faction terrain +1 rend and anti-war machine +1 rend. So nice little passive ability. 3 other abilities, and then I'll get Aaron to respond. Into the Breach, which is once per turn at the end of any turn. Pick a friendly Zorod's Ironmonger unit that's more than 9 inches from any enemy unit that had damage points allocated to it. That unit can move D6. It can't move through combat ranges. It can't end its move in combat. You then have Ironclad Scrims, which is a passive ability. Friendly Zorek Ironmongers Ardboys units with 3 or more models have a ward of 5-up, while they're wholly within 12 inches of a different friendly Zorek Ironmonger Ardboy unit with 3 or more models. The last thing you have is Shield of Scrap and Muscle. So while a friendly Zorek Anvil Smasher is within combat range of a friendly Ardboys unit, Zorek Anvil Smasher has a ward of 4+. Each time you make a successful ward roll, it basically is a bodyguard, so you can allocate it to the Ardboys instead of Zorek. So, obviously there's hero traits and artifacts and stuff to come in a second, but thoughts so far on the rules? You mentioned the 5-up ward is delicious. Anything else at this point?
Yeah, so Into the Breach is pretty darn good. It's just a nice to have. Like, extra mobility on a very slow army is pretty nice. The GHB changes of field marshal stuff, playing that with +2 movement makes these 4 go to 6, and then you can move these D6s every once in a while, which one of the important things is it's once per turn, end of any turn. So if like a unit comes in, let's see if 2 units fighting someone, and you fight with one, you do some damage, they strike with them, and then you finish them off with the other unit. You took damage in that combat phase, you could move D6. If you get shot, you can move D6. Take spell damage, you get to move D6. And you can really be really, really clever with this. There's a lot of like interesting things you can do. Like multi-charging and combat sequencing to intentionally like, I'm gonna charge this thing over here with 2 different units. One's gonna pile in. You're gonna get hit, and then I'm gonna move at the end, and like there's a lot of cool things you can do. It's like a really clever, cheeky thing that's gonna come up a lot. The ward saves on our boys is nuts. They're already like really, really hard to kill, and I'm used to playing them in Weird Fist where they're a 6-up ward. They're really hard to get rid of at that. 5-up ward starts to get disgusting, filthy. So and Zagrok obviously gets that ward save, which is nice because he's like kind of a linchpin, helps you a lot more damage through his armor. I think these all combine towards a very specific play style that does it very well.
How do you think about making the most of that 5-up ward? Because while the 5-up ward is delicious, it does require you to have another unit wholly within 12 inches, an Ardboy unit. So you're going to have 2 Ardboy units within 12 inches wholly within. So, and I know you talked about having 60, and I don't know if that's just a real number or if you just plucked that out of the sky, but keeping 2 reinforced units of Ardboys wholly within 12 inches is hard, especially when you've got battle plans that have 6 or 8 objectives. So you've got this big ball of death that you're not very movable. So yeah, what do you think about this?
So what you're going to probably want to be doing is running a 20 and a 10, a 20 and a 10. And you make the little 10-man into like a little ball, basically, or like a little smaller space, and you kind of use it to block lanes and kind of be annoying. And basically they have to kill that unit, which is already going to be hard. It's already 20 wounds on a 3-up, 5-up, in order to have any chance of killing that other unit, which takes up time and resources that they probably won't have because you're going to be hitting harder than you used to with this. And you can basically have these like couple blocks. There's definitely some downside, like positioning will be tricky with this army, and this army will not be good at like 6 objectives or more. It's going to be really, really hard to win those games. So you're going to have to put in like some little tech pieces to account for that. But that's why I said 60. It's 20-20, 10-10. And they kind of move, and they have little support pieces and stuff like that, and they just grind through everybody.
Yeah, I imagine, you've got maybe, let's say you've got 2 big blocks of Ardboys, let's say in the middle, you've got 10 on the flank, like basically protecting, staying, and maybe it also means into the breach if that unit of 10 gets hit, you don't take the D6 because then it might move you out of range. So just being mindful of making sure that I think
it's going to be really easy to mess yourself up with it. Like it's going to be really easy, but if you play it tight, you play it right, and you think if you're one of those players who can think several steps ahead and start your movements from a macro standpoint of like, I want to be in this position by the end of turn 2. If you're that sort of player, this is going to be great for you.
Yeah, chewing through this wound is going to be very tough. It's going to be basically Suns on steroids. It's that good.
Yeah,
it's a lot of wounds, and then you still rally those models. You can still do so much.
Well, there's the artifact and command tray which aren't on this page, right? Here it is. Yeah. So as you're saying, back to it gives you 3 additional rally rolls, and the Ardboy boss already gives you 3 additional rally rolls. So you're actually rolling 12 dice on these units that are 3-up, 5-up. Like, if you don't finish that unit off, you basically did nothing. I'm going to just rally, and then now I'm back with, like, my whole full unit again. And you're just not going to deal with it. You're not going to kill it. So it really puts you in a hard spot where you either have to fully commit and maybe exactly kill the unit. If you don't, tough luck, because they're all coming back.
Yeah, as you say, like, and any of those 3 objectives. Sorry, there might be a tiny bit of lag. So actually, they're fighting over those small amount of objectives can be really tough. The large objectives, a lot of objectives, will be very hard to win. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, like it's
okay.
Yeah, we good.
I lost connection for a second. Yes, there we are. So I want to talk about the Great Wallapa. I was earlier talking about how there is a nice combo with the Mega Boss on foot. This one is it. Basically, because you can chain activate, you swing with them onto the target, subtract 1 from their save rolls, and they ignore positive modifiers, so they can't like all out defense, anything like that, onto a unit, and then hit them with the brutes they're chain activating. Is even if he stays at his points with the nerfs they got, if you're playing Zogok's Ironmongers, you should try and find a way to fit the Mega Boss on foot and some brutes with them, because this is like real nasty. Even just with like a Ragers or like a little cheaper running alongside him, if you could find a way to fit it, like functionally in many ways, when it matters, subtracting 2 from their save and then hitting them with them and their +1 attack, and you're probably going to have Called Waaagh +2 attacks. Like you're hitting really, really hard. You're deleting things. And this list, the big problem is just how slow it.
Might have lost Aaron, and if we do, we'll make a cut here at this particular point. But otherwise, we'll just keep talking. But it's the benefit of pre-recording. We can just see what's going on. But I was just sort of vets.
make this easier for the tuts.
Hello, Aaron. Yeah, I can hear you. Talk to me a second.
Okay, ba 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 ba. I think it's all working good.
Cool. Give me 1 second. All right, so we just had a minor cutout. Pretty sure. Oh, should have done it. All right, we're back. Sorry, we had a minor little break we had to take. Got cut out. Do apologize. But we were just talking a little bit about the Great Walloper. And just for the folks at home, I will read the rule out and then I'll let Aaron kind of go back to the thinking around the Mega Boss. So the Great Walloper being the only artifact you can choose from if any damage points are allocated to an enemy unit by attacks made by this unit, that enemy unit is crumped. What is a crumped unit? So until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from save rolls for that unit, and then you ignore positive modifiers to save rolls for that unit.
Yeah, this one is awesome. This is one of the many reasons why I love this Army of Renown. And as I was alluding to earlier, where there's a combination that makes, even if it doesn't go down in points at all, the Mega Boss on foot with the Great Walloper supporting a unit of brutes, going in, swinging first, and then chain activating. Gets to swing first, and you immediately get to swing into the unit. So they get -1 to save rolls, and if they all defense, they can't. So it's in many cases kind of like having -2 to save. And you're probably at +1 attack from Waaagh, and you're +1 attack from him. So you're just deleting like anything. One of the biggest weaknesses of brutes is their rend is not very good. So it can be a little swingy with save rolls. This completely flips it on its head and makes them into an instant delete. And that's important, I think, because this army is very slow in plotting. So being able to just like, that's dead. That thing right there that I need off the table is gone. It's a really powerful ability to have, and exactly what this subfaction needs to really shine. So it's perfect.
You've got 2 unique, we got 1 prayer, 1 spell. So the spell being the Green God's Hammer, the Hammer Ballet. It's playing into Aaron quite nicely there. So you basically get a wizard. That wizard then casts on a infantry unit wholly within 12 inches. It is casting value of 7. If you're successful until the start of your next turn, add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls to a maximum of 3. So Kragnos via spell.
Yeah, this is pretty good. And it plays into that Great Walloper combo I was talking about very nicely. I believe you don't get the other spells, right? You don't get the regular war.
Yeah, you sacrifice your spells, your prayers, your heroic traits, your artifacts, and those abilities, as you said, like Mighty Destroyers, and you get what's here. So another example, Aaron, is you can see on the right-hand side, you've got the Gork Roarer manifestation. It means that the foot of Gork is off the table. You can't get it. So you could choose a different manifestation lore, and you could go Morbid and get all of the spells from Morbid. But if you stick with the Orruk one, you would only get the Gork Roarer because that's what's in the Army of Renown. So it is a little restrictive, but that's the thing.
So it's a strange design choice. I'm not really sure why they did that, but whatever.
The Orruk, that one is the one that I'm like, I think I even said that on the Kruleboyz video. I'm like, I don't quite understand why you would incentivize me not to take my own lore. Like, why are you getting me to go and all like
and if it forced you that you had to take that manifestation lore and you only got the one, like, okay, they're just trying to like tune down the power of this thing a little bit because it has other strengths, but it's not even that. It's just kind of a weird thing. But I would not take manifestation lore with 1 spell.
I'd rather just you force me to take the Orruk one. Like, just force me to stay in house. Like, anyway.
Yeah, agreed. But I would say the spell is quite good. It is not necessary. It depends on how you're building. So it like Zagrak's Ironmongers definitely incentivizes a lot of Ard boys, but there is definitely a take on it where you're playing like 4 units of 10 and you're not playing 60 and you have more room for like brutes and more threat pieces or like ragers and stuff like that. If you're playing more, building a little bit more that way, where you're using your Ard boys as like heavy tar pits that are really, really heavy, and then you're swinging around with damage units, then you do want to bring a wizard because the spell is good. But if you're just playing a bunch of Ard boys, I wouldn't worry too much. I would rather bring other pieces, I think, with this spell, and only this spell. Like, you don't have teleport. Zagrak's big downside is it's not mobile, and you're losing all mobility tools that the wizard gives you, so it's not really solving problems for you. And I think you're better off with like Ard boy bosses, mega bosses, Zagrak, and just meat on the table, just stat checking people.
Interesting, because I would have thought that a shaman with the green god hammer in combination with, say, a brute rager or the wreckers, giving them 3d6, or even to use what you said, a mega boss on foot, like that is huge threat potential of 3d6 charge. And then you add the ragers and the wreckers can run and charge. They can reach out and touch almost anything on the board.
They definitely can't. So I was saying, like, if you're playing super Ard boy heavy, you probably don't need this. But if you're playing the ragers and the brutes and like you're playing Ard boys, but it's not all Ard boys, this becomes quite good. And it also works for countercharging, which is pretty spicy. Is because they took it away from the War Channa and they took it away from Kragnos. So now this is your only access to 3d6 countercharges. Realistically, technically you can do it with War Channas, but it's like a very difficult thing to do. This is super useful. So if you're playing more brutes, if you're playing at least like 2 brute-ish units in your army, then I would say bring a shaman and do this because it's strong.
Yeah, like the 3D, unless you want a slingshot. Yeah, I mean, the 3d6 charge on a Ard boy is getting the 5 up and then trying to keep them within range of another boy doesn't quite play the scale.
Kind of breaking open your castle, and it's like, I don't know if that's really what you want to be doing.
I know you weren't a big fan of the War Chanter. You do have a prayer, this Get 'em Gork, chanting value 5. So you don't get the regular chants, but you do get this one. So basically you roll it D6. If the chant value is 5 to 9, pick a visible terrain feature wholly within 12 inches. If it's a 10 plus, you can pick it wholly within 18. That terrain feature is trampled by Gork for the rest of the turn. Then roll a D3 each time an enemy unit starts or ends a move within 6 inches of a terrain feature that's trampled by Gork. On a 2 plus, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the enemy unit equal to that roll. Does that change your opinion at all on War Chanters? If you've got the Get 'em Gork prayer?
No, I mean, this is not bad. It just doesn't synergize super well with how Ironjawz plays. Like, chip damage it's fine, but like people aren't really going to care. Whereas like some armies are like shooting you and like doing all these various forms of small amounts of damage that add up over time. If you only have this and it's kind of hard to do, like you have to go at least a 5 and you have a 10 plus to pick one terrain feature wholly within 18. It's just not, it's weirdly restrictive and hard to do. If it was easier to get the prayer off, like if this was like going off on like a 3, I would definitely do this. It's awesome, but it's being this hard to chant, not having access to your other chants. It's like there's cool tech you could do with it for sure. Like if you have your guys sitting in Wildwoods, and then you hit your own Wildwoods, so if they come into melee with you, every turn they're taking D3, 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 D3 while they're fighting you, and your shield bash. It's pretty cool. It's just too hard to do. A 5 plus, it's like, imagine if this spell was a spell that cast on a 9. Be like, no, I'm not going to try that. It's too hard to do. It's a cool ability, but yeah.
When I first read this, when I was reading the book, I got really excited. I'm like, oh, the terrain's trample. This is great. It reminded me of like Smash to Rubble in 3rd edition. I'm like, yes, I'm going to shut down this person's terrain. Those Gits players can't bring things back from Loon Shrines. Taunt cards can't be teleporting. And then you read the second paragraph, you're like, oh, it's not.
Okay.
Just trampled by Gork is really more like a tickle than a trample. Like, oh.
Yeah. You know what's funny is like this would actually be probably pretty good in Kruleboyz, this spell, if they had that. Or this, like, if they had an ability like this, but it's not. It doesn't do anything in Ironjawz. It's not how they play.
It's nice, but it's like I wouldn't be taking a War Chanter just to get this.
Yeah,
It's exactly right. You'll use it if you've got a War Chanter, but like, would I go and purposely put on? No, I'll get more meat, as you've already said.
Yeah.
Cool. Last comments, and then I want to move to Big Waaagh and give us the space for that discussion. So, given that we've talked about Ironjawz so far, we've now talked about this Zoryx Ironmongers. Any final thoughts between the two? You know, I know you like this. It's definitely the meat wall, hard boy type of roots, things like that as well. You think it's competitive? You think it's like a 3-2 army, 4-1 if you do really well and you practice hard and eat your vitamins?
What I will say, I do think it's competitive. I think you have to look at what the GT's mission pack is before you play this. That's the big thing. Like, it is competitive, but like if you're playing a GT and there's like Scorched Earth and 2 other 6 objective missions, like you're not going to do well at this. Like you might win 1 or 2 of those games, but like it's going to be very hard. So, but there's only like 1 objective mission. I would say, yeah, this is great. It's also an amazing teams army, like for team tournaments, which are, in my opinion, the best way to play Warhammer. They're super fun. This is a fantastic teams list. So, and I do think it is seriously competitive in the right mission pack for a GT. You just have to be careful with it.
Yeah, the 6 and 8s, even the 5s, anything that, and even think at your battle tactics, like who takes the flanks, who takes the land, and you can't even access your regiments of renown, so you can't even bring anything outside. So it's like,
yeah, it's very restricted, and you're gonna have to like you're gonna have to be let like 5 steps ahead, Galaxy Brain Chess player when you're playing this. It looks like, I've said this many times. I used to play competitive Magic, and I always said that green is actually the hardest. Like mono green is the hardest way to play at the highest level of competition, and this is kind of that, where it's like the amount of forethought you have to put into your moves at a high competitive level is a lot. But I do think it is good enough. So like, I think with the right mission pack, I would play this and actually be chasing that 5-0 and think I have a real shot at it with this.
It's basically a DPS check. Basically, it's like the old Gargant discussion. Can I bring down a Gargant? If I can't bring down that big block of 20 Ard boys and it just grinds and grinds, I'm never going to take up the objective of you. And in those smaller battle plans with less objectives, you win. Like, that's stuns, right? But when Suns plays 8 objectives, there's a reason why I don't play 4 megas, is because I need those little man crushers to go out and hold the back objectives, go take the flanks, because otherwise, I guess, who is your man crusher? You know, who's going to be taking the flanks? Who's going to be...
Weird boot regulars is the answer, though, to that. Like, 2 years to 3, it's like they're super cheap, pretty fast. It's still going to be tricky, and they're very vulnerable. And there is definitely weakness, but like, there's ways to do it. You just have to build very consciously and understand what's going to happen. But it's a good army. It's worth playing.
I appreciate you. I was being rhetorical. I appreciate the answer, but that's more like,
be as useful as possible.
Keep that in your list construction consideration, because otherwise you'll just find that, you're a big meat wall, but you can't score battle tactics. So, well, you're on home stretch. We're on the home stretch now. Here we go. Big Waaagh. Before I show the rules, are you excited to talk Big Waaagh?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited about Big Waaagh. I, as some of you may know, I was like the Big Waaagh guy. I did the last video with you about Big Waaagh. I love Big Waaagh. And I'm very excited to talk about this. And I do think there's a lot of exciting things. I think it's going to be one of those armies. It's going to take people a while. But once you find your build and how you want to play it and all that, I think it's going to be awesome, and it's super exciting. There's so many options. I love toolboxes. So if you like toolboxes, it's real. Big Waaagh is real.
So I'm going to reveal it all now. Now I'm going to set the context, and then Aaron can kind of take us home. So first off, this is very different to the other armies of renown in the game. So even what we just spoke about, couple of things to consider. If you play Big Waaagh in 3rd edition, this is very different. Very different. Both from a rules benefit point of view, there's no Big Waaagh table that you're building up on. Second of all, the list construction is very different. So the thing that you need to know is that when you pick a Big Waaagh faction, I want you to read, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd sentence at the top there. For each regiment that you include a Big Waaagh Army of Renown that's led by an Ironjawz hero, you must include a regiment that's led by a Kruleboyz hero, and vice versa. So if you've got one hero that is an Ironjawz hero, you must complement it with a Kruleboyz. It's 1 for 1. Doesn't mean you've got to have the same roster loadout. It doesn't mean you're going to spend the same points on each one. But basically, for every one hero of Kruleboyz, you've got to have an Ironjawz and vice versa. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind. When you build your list, it's any Ironjawz unit, any Kruleboyz unit. You don't get any Regiments of Renown, and you don't get the faction terrain. So neither side of the faction terrain, you don't get the Kruleboyz, you don't get the Ironjawz. But that does also mean you get Kragnos, because Kragnos is both Ironjawz and Kruleboyz keyword. And so you basically get everything. It's just that your heroes are locked.
Yeah.
I'll read out a couple of the rules and then I'll get you to jump in for a sec. So a couple of things you need to know is, first off, you get notorious bosses, once per battle deployment phase ability. You pick one friendly Big Waaagh Ironjawz hero and one friendly Big Waaagh Kruleboyz hero. Neither of them have a heroic trait. You get to give them a heroic trait. So on the second page, there is 5 options that you can choose from, 4 or 5 options. We'll get to it in a second. So you get hero traits. Amazing. So you get 1 at least construction, and then you get 2 at deployment. So you have potentially 3. Amazing. 2 other things, and this is going to be important, is you have possessed by the power of the Waaagh and then the power of the Waaagh. So let's start with the power of the Waaagh first. Once per turn in your hero phase, pick up to 1 friendly Ironjawz and 1 friendly Kruleboyz unit to be the target. That unit has the power of the Waaagh for the rest of the battle. The second part is, while a friendly unit has the power of the Waaagh ability, if it's an Ironjawz keyword hero, add 1 to the run rolls and charge rolls for that unit. If it's a Kruleboyz unit, they will score crit hits on an unmodified 5-up instead of a 6-up. Finally, and probably the sexiest rule of them all, is rally the war clans. Yeah. So once per turn, your movement phase, if your general's on the battlefield, pick a friendly Big Waaagh unit that started on the battle with 3 models or more that's being destroyed. Set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit, rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of your general and more than 9. Aaron, before I pass it over to you, I just want to make this call out. Stormcast have this rule. Skaven has this rule. The difference between them is that you don't pay a command point. They do. This is free.
Also, the Stormcast one is only once per game. This is not once per game. It's once per turn.
I was just a saying. I have a saying. If it's free, it's for me. Eric.
I was super good. This is so good. So first of all, I want to say, like, if you used to play Big Waaagh, you will like this. So importantly, the power of the Waaagh, the one that you get to pick a Ironjawz unit and a Kruleboyz unit, and those last until the end of the battle. But you could do that each turn. You get to do that, and they all stay until the end of the battle. So you slowly stack up these buffs across your units and put on the ones that matter in a given time, but they all keep them the whole game. So as the game goes on, you get stronger and stronger, which I think people who used to play a lot of Big Waaagh really liked, that sort of the generalship involved in playing it. So it's got a lot of the strategy at the macro level, like what you're kind of trying to do is kind of similar, but the way they did this is really exciting. You're playing an awesome trading game, which normally Destruction kind of sucks at, other than Gets, because you send in units and you fight and they die and you're like, cool, I'll bring them back. Not all of them, but enough to matter, right? Like, I mean, like, turn 1, pump up some Ragers, fling them in, run and charge, hit them in, they kill something, they die. Cool, I'll just bring them back. Or if you're going to fight aggression, you just put a unit in the way, like let's say some Hobgrots, per se. And they die, and it goes into your turn, and you're like, cool, here's 5 more Hobgrots for free. It's really, really, really strong. On top of that, there's a lot of really cool synergies and dynamics that can happen between Kruleboyz and Ironjawz. They really complement each other's strengths and weaknesses really, really well. Like, they cover all the bases for each other. So, like, this fundamentally is very strong. Like, Bolt Boys with Ardboys in front is a lot better than Bolt Boys with Gut Rippers in front. It's just like a better version of the two things, right? If you're playing a tank and spank army, the Mire Brute hits so hard, and he can sneak in between things really easily. So like, whereas Kruleboyz it's a little bit hard to play him in Kruleboyz, but in Big Waaagh he becomes really good. And when you're stacking all these like interesting abilities on people, adding 1-2 run and charge rolls is really good. And it's just all. It's going to take a lot of figuring out exactly your build. Like just looking at this, you can tell that there's so many decisions, and you have to have the balanced regiments. You're synergizing between two armies, a lot of units to pick from, knowing like how to deploy and who you're buffing when, and like all that sort of stuff. It's a long learning curve, but this thing has it. It's got the stones. It's going to get you once you know what you're doing with it. It will take a few months, I think, for anyone to get the right builds for themselves. But once they do, this is really good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really powerful, and I want to double down on what you said around, the complementary force, right? If you love your pickies, you could run a big vulture, whether it's a wizard vulture or a combat vulture to support, right? You don't have to go the mega boss. As you said, you want to run those man skewer bolt boys and the monster skewer bolt boys, monster skewers. You can have them protected by odd boys. You've got the big pigs running around. They could be supported by so many. Like, there's so many things that this complementary could do. Like, you have a couple little MSU, the monster killers. Like, there's so many options that you can tap into.
Yeah. Because like Ironjawz doesn't have little MSU units. Like, it's one of the weaknesses of the army. You don't have anything like that that's like cheap and gets in the way. So like Hobgrats also are really good in an Ironjawz army because you don't have anything like that, right? So like, there's all these nice synergies. I love it.
Yeah, I think this is like Cities of Sigmar. It's like the list builder's dream. You can just bring in so many different ways, and the way that your army plays. If you are Kruleboyz, like, you add some Ironjawz to your Kruleboyz, and you're going to see fundamentally how different the army works, and then vice versa. Like, us Ironjawz players all wish they had some shooting, and all of a sudden I've got shooting. It's like, whoa, this is what I can do. Now I've got things that I can unlock. I've got something that can protect the home objective. I can cover fire. I can do chipper weights and things before I go in and smash them.
Yeah,
so many opportunities.
It's so good. I just want to say before we get to the next little page, if this was all the rules and they had like super mediocre command traits, like really just not much, this would still be good. But they're not. They're pretty great. So
I love it. You could set up an OnlyFans with that type of teaser. So let's look at this. There are 4 heroic traits to choose from, 1 artifact, 1 spell, 1 prayer. Those spells and prayers are unique as well. I'm going to start on the artifact because it's nice and easy. It's a solo one. The artifact is the Sneaky Stab Slab. It's each time you make an unmodified save roll of 6 for a combat attack that targets his unit, inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the fight ability has been resolved.
This is like it's okay, it's cool. This is like the weakest thing in here, but like it's not bad. It's pretty good on like a Mcryan, because they have a lot of wounds. They're pretty tanky and they're big base. And like if you charge into like a horde unit and they're gonna be rolling a bunch of dice, and you're like, take a bunch more damage. It's nice. It's not amazing, but it's aight.
Yeah, chuck it on the vulture, chuck it on a Mcryan, but yeah, like it's fine. The real secret sauce comes in from the 4 heroic traits. So remember, you get 1 when you build your list, and then you get 2 in deployment when you trigger a Big Waaagh. So let's look at our 3 options, and I'd love, Aaron, one at a time to then go right. Like, what would you start off from a deployment point of view, and then what your thinking is for the others? So the first one and the easiest one is taken names. If an enemy hero is destroyed by this unit has the power of the Waaagh keyword for the rest of the battle. It's fine. I'll get Aaron to share in a minute, but like it's the most standard one.
Yeah.
The rest of them are once per battle abilities, and you'll notice the keyword brutal cunning. So once per battle, let's look at the old 1-2. Basically, all 3 of them have the same declare. So you pick this ability if this unit has the power of the Waaagh keyword and the friendly unit has not used the brutal cunning ability this turn. For the rest of the battle round, friendly Big Waaagh unit melee weapons have crit 2 hits while they're wholly within 12 inches of the unit. A proper sneak is for the rest of the battle round, friendly Big Waaagh units have a ward of 5 up while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Get Krumpen. For the rest of the battle round, add 1 to the wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Big Waaagh units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. 4 options, 3 to choose from. How do you see all these?
These are, I mean, taking names is like mediocre, but whatever. That's not the one we're excited about. It's fine. Like, I guess you could take it if the other ones aren't going to be good in how you built your list, but you're probably not. You're probably taking these other ones. These ones are all fantastic. I think the playstyle kind of speaks for itself, where you essentially keep your guys in aura and you're getting these incredible buffs. Like a 5-up ward, as we were talking about the Ardboys before, on Ardboys is silly. Like, they will not die. And then you're sitting there and you got like bolt boys shooting at people, and you just kind of shove up and take a bunch of space, and you're like, okay, so took all the space. You're going to charge me, but I got 40 Ardboys here, and I have a 5-up ward, and I'm shooting you, so you got to come at me, otherwise I'm going to keep shooting you. And they can't kill you, and now they're stuck there. And the crit 2 hits, there's a couple little combos. It's pretty good. I won't say it's like insane, but it's pretty darn good. There's a spell in normal Ironjawz that can give that crit 2 hits, right? But it's an aura, and when you're really like coming in and doing a bunch of fights, it just mathematically it tilts the math big time. And the power of the Waaagh can make you crit on 5s if you're Kruleboyz. Most Kruleboyz already have crit effects, so it's not as good, but like it's interesting, and it's pretty strong. And +1 to wound is just good. I mean, we all know it's good, but like most brutes are winning on 3s. Going to 2s is actually a substantial increase in damage. Like, it just all kind of adds up. So if you're trying to do damage, you're trying to survive, like it does that, and you get to put it where you want to when you want to. So like you're talking really about the Vulture boss, like you can have him basically escorting big pigs, then give them all +1 to wound. They're winning on 2s now, and flying around with this other guy, and he's got a big base, big aura, and all this aggressive pieces are now buffed up. There's a lot of play, and it's going to be definitely one of those things where like knowing when and where and how to properly apply this and building your army in a way that utilizes all of these well in different moments is going to take a long time to master. But once you do, these are fantastic. These are super strong.
Any units that you think would work well in a Big Waaagh, whether it's Kruleboyz or Ironjawz? Actually, let's go Kruleboyz, right? So you're the Ironjawz player, and you're like, I'm going to dabble in Kruleboyz. What type of things would you look at to potentially mix into your Ironjawz force?
I mean, first up, bolt boys and the beast skewer. Having access to shooting in an army that is designed around the idea of it having no shooting is big. Like, you're designed to be a fighty death brick, and now you have access to shooting. Like, imagine if Slates of Darkness had good shooting. That would be a nightmare. No one wants to see that, right? And that's where you're at with this, where you're like, okay, yeah, but I'm playing an absolute beat stick army, and I'm going to keep shooting you. That's really strong. Swamp Caller Shamans are pretty darn good in general, but like, I really like the Mire Brute. I think he does some similar stuff to what you can do in Ironjawz, but it's just subtly different in the way he. I used to play Big Waaagh, the way he fits into places, and like just the kind of the efficiency of how much damage you can do, especially with these buffs. As you're playing like Ardboys and stuff like that, he comes and he just slams and picks up whole units. That's a really strong tool to have access to. And Gobsprack is cool. There's some ones that like immediately exciting.
Yeah, and as you mentioned as well, the Monster Killers being a decent unit. Assuming that you all haven't seen the other video that I've done on Kruleboyz, maybe one thing to call out is the Snatcher boss on Sludge Draker Beast and the Gut Ripper combination doesn't work like it used to, so you don't trigger the mortals on 5s now, and like all the +1 damage and blah blah blah. That little synergy has been broken up, so thus why we haven't talked about Gut Rippers, because otherwise that would be obviously a great little combination as well. But there's a couple of good options depending on how you want to build. And as the meta swings, like the Beast Skewer bow could be great, the Man Skewer. And, talking Man Skewers, you talked about the 5-up ward on the Ard Boys. Well, what happens if you've got like long strikes, Sentinel, some type of shooting unit that's going to go for yours? Boom, 5-up ward. You can protect them. So it's great.
It's super good. Its position's gonna be hard, but there's a lot of units, and it's Big Waaagh's always been this, but it's like once you know what the meta is, you can build between those two armies the perfect counter to whatever the meta is. If there's a lot of infantry, you can really crush it. If there's a lot of monsters, you have access to really, really good tools to handle monsters. If it's very controlling, there's some stuff you can do here. If people are playing very defensively, there's some really spicy plays that you can make with this, which I'll get to once we get to the spell lore and stuff like that. But
let's go there right now. So spell lore, prayer lore. There's one spell, one prayer. Because you said spell lore, let's start spell lore first. Casting value 7, 2 eds as 1. So basically, you cast the spell on an infantry unit that's wholly within 12. Now, depending on who you pick, if you pick the Ironjawz unit, until the start of your next turn, add 3 to the control score while it's wholly within 12 inches of a Kruleboyz unit. Or if you pick a Kruleboyz unit until the start of your next turn, add 2 to the move characteristic while it's wholly within 12 inches. Yeah, wholly within 12 inches of an Ironjawz unit. So there is a codependency, as you can see, not just in list construction, then back in the spell. Do you want to talk prayer next? And would you want to go spell now?
Well,
talk spell.
I'm going to talk spell because of this spell is some interesting stuff that I think contextually isn't obvious. So the Ironjawz buff one it's okay. Sometimes you'll want to do it, I guess, but it's like a late game, I need just a little bit to take this objective. The Kruleboyz one is what gets really interesting here. So, because of Field Marshal, the new GHB, and you're going to be playing a lot of characters in this subfaction. You're going to have at least 3. Really, you can kind of have 4.
You have to have 4.
And you're probably going to be playing actually 5 if I had to guess, the way this works out. Because
no, it'd be 6. You'd have to do 6 at left.
Well, it's like subfaction, like sub-heroes.
Unless you're building
a hero. So, if you have the +2 movement from that sub-hero, which would be an Ironjawz hero. So, let's say you're playing an Ard Boy boss. Cast this spell. They're getting +2 movement from that, +2 movement from that, that's +4 movement. You can run stuff like the Dobby. I always forget his name. The Slogoth. Marshcrawler. And you can give run in charge. So you can really get a lot of sudden surprise movement. That people aren't going to see coming, where you're I have +4 movement, and I've got all these bonuses to runs and charges going around everywhere, and I'm getting people run in charge, and so it's really flexible in that way, and you just bring a spell lore that you have multiple spells with, so most of the time you're just casting your manifestations. But when there's an opportunity like this, you can really surprise someone being just missile across the table and they don't see it coming. So there's a lot of cool tech you can do there. And then if you're doing that and you're playing some fast characters maybe, and then you end up giving them +1 to wound or crit 2 hits, you can really, there's a lot of playmaking potential and game reversal, where things are going bad and all of a sudden you just steal the game out from underneath somebody with tools like this. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I dig this spell a lot. It doesn't mean that you got this codependency, which can be challenging, especially. Yeah, that's probably the only thing you've got to really think through. But it's a good spell. It's just that codependency, and it's also not unlimited either. So unlike what we saw in the last Army of Renown, you don't have any unlimited spells or unlimited prayers.
Yeah. So, I think it's just one of those ones where it's got cool tech, but you're going to bring a manifestation, let's say Morbid or whatever, and you're just casting those, and then when there's an opportunity, you can use it to really surprise somebody. And it's one of those kind of cool spells that's movement is king in Warhammer, and gaining bonuses to movement in fundamentally slow armies is a big game.
the prayer that you've got, the unstoppable Waaagh beats, chanting value 4 has to go on an infantry unit that's in combat and wholly within 12 inches. It's an interesting one, right? That caught us off when we were talking the Kruleboyz episode. Like, we caught that one off guard. Like, wait a second, it says you've got to start in combat. Anyway, the point is the target can use 2 fight abilities, but then obviously the second one is strike last. If you've got a 10 up, you can pick 2 eligible units. So outside the condition, it's actually quite cool. It's just unfortunate that you've got to be in combat to trigger it, and you've got to be within 12.
Yeah, so it's one of those ones that normally I'd be like, oh, there's too many restrictions here. But I think the particular way that Big Waaagh is, and like, let's say you're playing a bunch of art boys, right? And you have bolt boys in the middle of them shooting at things and protected by them. People are kind of incentivized to come into you to try and clear and get at those bolt boys if we're going to get shot. So people really do want to come in and fight. And Ironjawz are very tanky and grindy. So you're like doing stuff like, oh, I've these guys and I'm shoving up and taking up all this space. You're going to have to fight me. Otherwise, you're not taking these objectives from me and you're not going to get past me. And you have a ward of 5+ because you did proper sneak. So you're like not dying. If you're stacking up Waaagh beats, you're just stacking up your chanting value until there's an opportunity like this. And just kind of hanging out. And if they come in, you're like, okay, well, now I'm just going to put them on there. And you can counter pray this because it's so good when it happens that it's, I think, worth investing into. And the way that, but you have to be built in a certain way. Like if you're playing a bunch of art boys type stuff and shooting, this is quite good. If you're playing an aggressive build, don't bring a War Channel. But in the right builds, I think this is quite good.
I agree. And I think it's again, this is just showing off between, and I'm going to talk to you about this when we wrap up the Big Waaagh part and just go back to an overall discussion. I think, if you want to make the most of Ironjawz right now, I hate to say it, but Gore Grunters and Cavalry is just not the place to be right now. Yes, you can get your support piggies, yes, but your Gore Grunters is definitely not going to be where I would be building the core of my force. It's Brutes, it's Art Boys, it's Rages, it's and then obviously if I'm Big Waaagh, I can then supplement with other units. But it's just showing me like every rule that I'm looking at is just more and more reason why I'm going infantry. And I know that for some people who got into this faction because they wanted the piggies, and I know a lot of people who started their army was just like 12 piggies and a big cabbage. That was their army. That's what they wanted to run. And I think you can still keep running that army if you really want to. But the power, whether it's in the Amble Smasher build, whether it's the Big Waaagh build, or it's the Ironjawz build, is definitely going to be infantry until something changes.
Yes, I agree with that. And I'm less upset about it than a lot of people are because I got really tired of pigs being the only Ironjawz build for like 2-3 years. I got sick of it. But I do feel bad for people because like Gore Gruntas, you can't build around. Like, I mean, I play 6 in a lot of my lists, but not because they're damage dealers. I have a very particular play style. But they're not good, and it is sad for people. But everything else is looking either as good as it was before or noticeably, substantially better. And I don't think that Gore just got worse. They're just not good to begin with. Yeah.
That's a reality. Like, they were never the best cavalry. They were never Vanguard. But certainly, I can appreciate the people who just want to go in and smash. Because again, as a Suns player, I just want to go in and smash. I don't want to play control. I don't want to be dancing around. I just want to smash you. And sometimes we just want to smash. But if you want to make the most of our Orruk Warclans and you don't want to get frustrated, I think you're definitely leaning in. Doesn't mean you can't take them, but I definitely wouldn't build the crust of my army around Gore Grunters.
I definitely like Gore Grunters, but if you like that play style, it's much more viable than it was before to now play big pigs, Gordrak, bunch of big pigs, going in, protecting them with like a shaman and your tower to kind of prevent them from getting countercharged. You can kind of nowhere near as strong as it was before because it was ridiculous before. But so was like third edition was a different game, right? But big pigs do have that play style. They do they do go in and smash. You have to be cunning, but they do have the brutal. Whereas Gorgruntas are just like they're pinning pieces that die and don't do anything else. That's it. So it's not exciting. It's useful, but it's not exciting. Whereas big pigs are genuinely, I think, because you can protect them and you have the tools you have now, and being able to Waaagh every turn with Gordrakk, and like you can really do a cool snowball-y, hyper aggressive. It's easy. It's finicky. It's risky, but I think that's people like about big pigs was the high risk, high reward thing. So it is good. At least it was not quite good enough before.
Speaking of high risk, high reward, we talked about this in the Kruleboyz video, but we haven't talked about it here. Kragnos and Big Waaagh. So, what are your thoughts on your side?
So, I don't like Kragnos. I'm a hater, but I do think that he makes some sense there. Kragnos is okay in Ironjawz. It's pretty good in Ironjawz because of Ironjawz Brawl and the +1 attack. If you make the big charges, like it's pretty strong. It makes him good. I just don't think he's too many points. He's so many points. But I really like he could be really good in Big Waaagh. It's just that you're going to be choking on points in Big Waaagh because you need to have the way that you have to build it. You need a lot of characters. You need a lot of regiments. It's going to be hard to fit him. If he drops a little bit in points, I think there's really cool stuff you can do there. There's really cool stuff. So, and he does go in both, and you can pick if he's going to be an Ironjawz or Kruleboyz character for the regiment, so you can there's some flexibility there.
Because you could start with Kragnos and then I don't know, superhero or flexible on either side, whether it's Gordrakk, whether it's Gobsprakk, or something that's really flexible. And you could do 2-drop. You could just go right. Kragnos is one, the other one's done. Fill up your roster. And
and I mean you can do like nice little wombo combos of running like the Vulture boss gets a 3d6 charge, you can do the impact hits and with Kragnos, and then also have like cool tech in our like Ragers alongside that, right? It's pretty cool because you're getting to send in the guys who strike first, and you're doing impact hits, and you're doing all this cool tech and like doing these AoE buffs that are pretty powerful. Like you could do some really cool plays there. I finding the right builds can be tricky, but I think there's a lot of potential for awesomeness if people can find the build and find the tactics that work for them.
You'd be giving up some of those heroic traits that we talked about, right? Like the notorious bosses. So you'd have to go Vulture or Mega Boss or more Crusher rather than 2 uniques in that example. But you could go low drop, or to your point, you could go really high drop. You could go 4 or 6 drop, or look for those units that are sub commanders that slot into a regiment without being a regiment. Yeah, and then that gives you more heroes, but plays
a lower drop. So it's going to be so hard to find the exact right build. I think it's going to be every build. Each person's going to have a different Big Waaagh build that works for them, because it's just how the army is. It's such a huge toolbox. Like, the unit has to be doing what you want it to do, and everyone's going to do a different thing. But that's what excites me about Big Waaagh. That's why I love it, and I'm excited to get to chat and banter online and talk trash about people's lists, and they talk trash about mine, and it's fun, But there's like infinite options in that army, and it's good. It's good.
So kind of coming to a close, and I mean, we could talk for hours, right? But, we've got the book here. Again, if you think about buying the terrain, any of the things, again, think of the partners, Warfire Minis, Element Games, or Gap in Australia, link below. Support the channel. Thank you very much. But like when we think about this book, right, kind of summarizing what we've talked about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about Ironjawz right now?
5 being an average army, right now, as in before the book or after this book about?
Let's say now. You know what? Let's do it your way. Prior to the book, so you've been playing Ironjawz for now. How are you feeling 1 to 10 before you got this tome?
4.5 maybe. Like just a little bit below average. So when it's 43, I think they're a little better than that. I think they're closer to like 47, 48 type power level, but people aren't used to how they play. They're playing them like old Ironjawz, stuff like that. The new book, I think, raises them closer to a 6 or a 7. in my opinion. I think it's actually substantial, and I think people very much underestimate how high an impact some of these changes are going to have. Your rules actually working is night and day. The synergies are incredible. Depending on points.
Yeah.
Obviously depending on points. But just in terms of like the structure of the book, massively better. Big Waaagh great.
You're not as down. Okay, I want to pause you on that one because I'm like, how much is that is being propped up by Big Waaagh? Because again, the tone of the internet at the time of recording is majority of people are feeling pretty down, pretty negative, and they're seeing a low win percentage with very little addition to their faction. They got no new units other than obviously Manifestation and Terrain feature, which should not be discounted. They're very big. And we talked very positively about their impacts on a list. But how much is how would you rate Ironjawz with the new book at the current points as we currently know it?
As we currently know it, Ironjawz without the Armies of Renown, like just Ironjawz, I think is at like probably like a 6.
Okay. Yeah, 5 to a 6 somewhere. I think
5 to a 6 area. I think it's a little bit above average. I think it's high skill cap. But in good hands, I think it has the tools to really succeed. I think we will see 5Ls with it and stuff like that, more so than it currently is. It's definitely an upgrade.
I can see the potential, but it goes back to what you've talked about a lot, which is being really Ardboy root focused rather than what we saw. Like the most successful Ironjawz we've seen in the past were that whole smash and bash type list where you had the more crush, you had the pigs, they went in, they just smashed and bashed, they kept bashing and bashing. They wouldn't win if I remember, the easiest victories I ever had was when I charged into them, shut that down, Gargants especially, because you can't just smash and bash through a Gargant very easily. And it was a very non-game, whether you smashed me through turn 2 or I smash you turn 2, turn 3. That style has really dropped back, and the Ardboy brute infantry, I know it's going to be something that people are going to have to get used to, and I know it's probably not what drew them to Ironjawz, but if you want to make the most, I think you'll have a lot of fun. And then the Big Waaagh, I think, is going to really sing to some people, because you can be the piggy build and support it with some shooting, with the vulture, with the Brute. Brute's great. Heals in every turn. It does some good combat. It's a nice little independent threat piece that I think a lot of people are going to have fun with Big Waaagh. I think it's going to be a real popular build at tournaments probably for the next 6 months.
Yeah. And I'm excited for standard Ironjawz. I know most people aren't, but I am. And I'm excited about Zogrux also. I think all of them are good. And I'm not just like talking it up like Kruleboyz I'm not excited about. I have no interest in playing Kruleboyz right now. The fun stuff for me is gone. The thing that I partially am a little biased because the things that I already didn't like, I didn't really ever care for Gorgot as much, and they, oopsie, dropped my paint box, but whatever. The stuff that I don't like as much is the stuff that got worse, and the things that got. It's a shame that War Channas are like real bad, but there's other options to buff your stuff. Like Zogrok's good, and Shaman buffs are good, and I'm excited about them, and I think people are overly down on them, and I think when they play a couple games, they're going to find differently. I think they're going to have a better experience than they think they will.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I shared on the other video that I remember when Nurgle, for example, I think it was going into 3rd edition, Nurgle changed where you could run and charge and slingshot yourself from a tree from the Feculent Narmor. And when they changed that rule and Nurgle got a whole bunch slower, that they raged. They absolutely raged. They were ready to throw things in the bin. The Great Unclean One is the worst model and so expensive. And then through some playing, actually, this tome has stood the test of times. I'm not saying that this tome is going to stand the test of times, but it may not be as bad. And you just need to adapt to a different play style and play with new toys. And
it's very much in those lines. I agree.
I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would know that rules are going to be adjusted and modified, and we've obviously seen some new infantry rules come up with the new General's Handbook. So I think with that all in mind, maybe two last things for you, Aaron. The first thing is for the people who are feeling negative or down from an Ironjawz point of view, and I did ask the Discord, I'm like, give me some questions, like what thoughts do you have around the server? Generally, they're all like, why does GW hate cavalry? Why are we the worst faction in the game? Why is this like terrible? And I can appreciate and understand where you're coming from. So, and like, be honest here. What would you say to those people who are currently feeling pretty down based on what they've seen so far on Ironjawz?
Yeah, so I mean, like, they're right that gore gruntas are bad, and that sucks. But big pigs are not bad. Big pigs are great. They're pretty much perfect. They're not like overpowered by any means, but they're genuinely very good. So if you like that playstyle, like that's there. I think actually the things that I think people are like, it's easy to forget how infuriating having to roll a 2-up for your buff was and not getting it with the Mega Boss, for example. And that changed. It's easy to forget how useless your Ard boys were when someone just decided, I'm just not going to charge. You're like, oh, well, I guess I don't do anything. Like, and that's different now. There's like a lot of things that people like maybe weren't consciously aware of how badly it was hurting them before those rules changed. And how much they were forced into these like shoehorned in these plays they didn't want to make, and like building like was weird. Like there's a lot of frustrating aspects that got fixed, and I think like try and approach with open mind, because like the Nurgle book where it's like you changed, but it's actually like the improvements are much more meaningful, I think, than it looks like on paper. That's what I would say to them. Like the GW does not hate Ironjawz. Kruleboyz, it's pretty rough. Like, but Ironjawz, I really think they're in a good spot. Points, whatever, who knows? But if nothing changes, I mean, I'm playing Ironjawz for an LVO coming up, and if the new book was out, I would feel much better about my chances at making top 8. Right now, I think it's. I mean, I'll try my best, but not super likely. The new book, I think I'd have a real shot. From a very competitive standpoint, they're good. Not every model is. War Channas and Gore Gruntas suck, but everything else is pretty good.
I think the last thing I'd share is like, just keep the context in mind, right? We are in the early parts of a new edition. These things take time to write from like a product development point of view, and that's part of my job, outside of YouTube land. This stuff takes 6 to 9 months, right? So there's a very good chance that this book was either written in 3rd edition or immediately after 3rd edition, and so 4th edition, sorry. And the meta that was potentially predicted maybe didn't quite manifest. Because I remember when I was recording my very first videos, I'm like, wow, there's no battle shock anymore. Are we about to see infantry just run wild? Like everyone just runs, 40 goblins, 40 zombies. They're just infantry, like the small objectives. We're just going to take over, and like infantry is going to run wild. What we've seen is really high armored infantry, your Chosen, your Stormcast, your OBR, cavalry being really dominant. And I wonder, when I look at some of the rules, maybe what was predicted and what came out maybe didn't quite translate. And I have absolute faith that whether it is in the next battle scroll, whether it's the next General's Handbook, and any errata in between, if this win percentage doesn't increase, I have some faith that there's going to be tweaks like I've seen in my sons. I got extra attacks, I got rules unlocked, I got a whole bunch of things. And then more priority target tasks. So, like, I would say to you all, stick with your faction. Try it. Don't just get on negative. Give it a shot. And then you'll start to reap the rewards. You will reap the rewards because you've done the hard slog. And hey, people are underestimating you right now. They're like, oh, Ironjawz is terrible. Okay, cool. Advantage you.
Plus, like, there's a very real... They've been showing a lot of willingness to change rules and stuff. Like, imagine how good this army suddenly becomes, and all those units that people are saying, like, Gore Gruntas can become if they change the War Channa. abilities to say, Gambit says this affects companion weapons. All of a sudden, doors wide open, right? Like, they've shown what like small wording changes, and those units that suck right now can really shine. So like, and they've been showing willingness to change those things. So if it does end up being on the weaker end, I have a lot of faith that they'll fix it, because they've been fixing so many problems so quickly and so effectively leading up to this. So yeah, stick with it, master it. Play the Armies of Renown. They're fun. They're super cool. So,
and there you go. Like worst case, just playing Big Waaagh for the next 6 months or three to 6 months, and then revisit when the rules change. All right, we've gone through a lot. Is there anything else you would share to our I know you're very deep in strategy. I know you think a lot about this. You played the World Championship. You're a very high caliber player. I didn't actually quite acknowledge that at the start, but Aaron did play at the World Championships and have played it 2 years in a row. So you clearly know your stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope that you haven't just been telling me stuff just to appease me and make inflate the Ironjawz players. I know you're being honest and genuine.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you'd share at this particular point? Not about the book, but just thinking or ideas or.
Yeah, I think there's a big way to think. So like it's really easy to get upset about like balance changes and stuff like that, but like realistically, is that there's a thing I learned in other competitive stuff, but the balance matters a lot less than you think it does. When there's a discrepancy of win rate of 5% between two armies, it's actually really not that meaningful in a play, because like, let's say this is 100 points versus 95 points. It's actually not that substantial of a difference, and making one play correct that you would have made a mistake on, improving by that amount, will reap you more rewards than the differential of this like balance that you're perceiving. Like the win rate differences don't matter that much. They look like they matter a lot, but it's really actually not, like you're much better off getting really, really good at your army and figure out all the things you can do. You're going to get way more rewards from that than you are going to be getting from like switching to a more powerful army, because you're just not going to play it as well. So really, I would say focus in on like getting really, really good at what you like, and you will reap the rewards for that. If you stick to your army and you pay attention, you do better each game, you try to do a little better, it will add up and you will get results, even if the army is on the weekend. I played Kruleboyz when they were at their weakest, their absolute weakest, and I lost horribly a bunch of times. And then I started getting like 4-1, 4-1, first 3 months of this edition, I played Ironjawz, got 2 4-1s. One of them I fought Trolls, Nighthaunt in a row with Ironjawz. I beat all 4 of them in a row. And these were good players too, because I knew my army super, super well. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So it is fun to complain on the internet. I love it too. I also like to rage on the internet. But in terms of what you should do, I think, is just buckle down and learn the mechanics. There's a lot to unpack inside Ironjawz. There's a lot of tech. There's a lot of tricks you can do. So that's my big message on how to think about things.
Look, I appreciate your TED talk. No, but jokes aside, this game is about 2 key things. It's about micro decisions. It's about movement.
Yeah,
I think this whole 2 hours we've talked a lot about the benefits of movement. We've talked about how you play into either the movement benefits to you and a movement denial of your opponent. And then the micro decision comes down to practice and understanding what your army can and can't do, and where your resources are best spent, and your priority and decision making. And it doesn't always be smashing and bashing. And sometimes it is that durability, that is those retreating, and it's the things that we've talked about, and why things like Art Boys, things like the redeploy heroic trait, all of these little new things that are coming in from the manifestations and the terrain feature will play into that. So again, this is why I'm not all doom and gloom. Yes, there's changes. Yes, I acknowledge frustration. Yes, Gork runners hitting on 5s are dumb, but it's not, I wouldn't throw the baby out just yet with that bathwater.
Yeah, agreed.
Aaron, you are on Discord, you are on the internet. if people wanted to chat to you or find you, any shout outs, and where can they chat more? And I'll try and put the link in the description.
I'm fairly active on your Discord. I do pop in and I make a lot of comments and try and be as useful as possible. I'm very receptive. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Discord. Just hit me up. I'm super friendly. I'll be at LVO and stuff like that. I'm always down to talk and give as much advice. And I really like to truly do my best to help and educate and talk. And I'll always give you time of day. So definitely that. I'm also recording a bunch of videos. I haven't posted anything yet, but I'm going to be making a tactics channel on YouTube for short form videos of specific tricks you can do. So I will be, but I haven't actually done it yet. I have made a bunch of videos. I haven't edited them together yet. So, but I will be doing that, and I'll start posting on Discords and Twitter and stuff like that. So once it's up, but yeah,
you keep us in the loop, and I'll share on it. I'll let you all know when it's out. But Aaron, you're absolute legend. Great to have you back. Again, go. Hopefully, look, I'm not here to convince you all that this is a good book. Far from it. This hopefully was a honest conversation, and a conversation that shows you that there is light in the tunnel. Yes, there might be some pain to get through that tunnel, but hopefully you can see the forest from the trees. You can start to see that there's opportunity. There is green shoots. I'm throwing every analogy I can possibly show in this particular part, right? Every analogy,
just got to get a little with it. You got to get a little cunning in here. That's what you got to do.
I'll chuck one more thing in there. The only thing that is consistent in life is change. Your book's changed. Go with it. You live or you die. Grow, and I don't know. Aaron, you're an absolute legend. I hope you found this video just interesting. You got the Kruleboyz side of it. Go check out the other one. It's all watching at the same time. Thanks, Games Workshop. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for everyone who listened. Hopefully this was beneficial, and it went longer than I expected, but hopefully that was actually really valuable, and you Ironjawz players have something to work with. But we'll chat all later, and Discord and all that stuff, and bye-bye. Go away. See you later.
Adios.
See you. Bye. Yeah. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.